The chair lays out House Bill 169 and recognizes its author, Representative Chair Sinfronia Thompson, to explain the bill. Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. The chair lays out House Bill 169. We do have good candy in the bay.
I just got through praying this morning and said, God, don't let me eat no sweets. And I just opened it up. Mr. Chairman and members, you know, this bill has been around, among other bills, for a long period of time. But we also, I'm going to give you the skinny on this bill. This bill simply lowers the penalties for possessing small amounts of marijuana and controlled substance, less than 1 gram from a state jail felony to a Class A misdemeanor, and the possession of marijuana for 2 ounces or less from a Class B to a Class C misdemeanor, and that's all this bill does. If there are any questions of the committee before you vote on this good bill, vote it out. I'm available. You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Y'all save me from that candy.
Yes.
Okay.
The chair recognizes Representative Hinojosa as present. Members, are there any questions for Chair Thompson? We'll call you back up to close, ma'am. We got 13
I'm not gonna
witnesses
eat
so
the
far.
candy now.
No candy.
I've gotten over it.
The chair calls Michael Spates. We do have an overflow of room, so I might need to give some people some time to get over here. It's Michael Spates. Okay, I'm going to keep going and then see if I can get the next person. I'll call his name again. The chair calls LaTanya Whittington. Well, this might be an easy day. The chair calls Jonathan Copeland. Okay. All right. The chair calls Karen Reeves. Chair calls Emily Garrick. Miss T, did you do this? Emily Garrick. Okay, I'm so sorry. For some reason, they don't let people talk. So the chair calls, let me see if she's registered. I don't see that name on here. So the chair calls Jacqueline Finkel.
Thank you, Chairwoman and committee members. My name is Jax Finkel, and I am representing myself as well as the Texas chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws and Foundation for an Informed Texas. You guys have a lot of great bills in front of you today, so I'm going to try to be real brief on my end. In general, we support them all, but we think that Representative Thompson's is a really wonderful bill, and one of the important reasons why we support her bill is that it addresses not only the overly harsh penalties for possession of flour, but also for possession of concentrates, which is a first-degree state jail felony, as she mentioned. So our organization does support this. I have already emailed and been in contact with all of y'all, and we did drop off some resource binders to all of your offices today with some infographics and some testimonials. So I'll be here all day. If you have any questions for me, I will keep it short. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you so much for your testimony. Members, any questions? All right, thank you. The chair calls Lauren Johnson.
Oh, good afternoon, Chair, members. My name is Lauren Johnson. I am here in support of HB 169, and I work with the ACLU of Texas. So very briefly, from 2014 to 2018, we saw a 28% increase in felony drug possession court cases filed, and that was prior to COVID, and everybody here is well aware of the court backlogs that we're seeing because of COVID. But what's interesting is that while the overall population of our prison system has dropped, there's been an increase in people who are serving time in our state jail system for possession of a controlled substance. And with the COVID epidemic impacting people's mental health in really substantial ways, we're seeing people in long-term recovery relapsing. We're seeing people using and overdosing at really high rates. When we noticed that there was a growth in people in the state jail system from before COVID, the number of people we currently have is 2,074 people in our state jail system for possession of a controlled substance less than 1 gram. And just for visual, a gram is like a sugar packet. That 2,074 people costs us $40 million a year. So $40 million a year, except that we have a 63% recidivism rate for the people in our state jail system. And the saying that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure is very timely. So $40 million could be used on pretrial lead programs. It could be front-end treatment programs. And last week, the committee passed HB 1086, which is a much more complicated and expansive version of some of this. And this is included in that bill. And so if you feel so inclined, you could just go ahead and vote this out of committee today and let them duke it out on the floor. I'm just saying. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Thank you so much. Chair calls Robert Marks. So sorry, Dr. Marks, thank you so much. If you could state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Absolutely. Thank you. My name is Dr. Robert Marks. I represent myself, and really I'm trying to represent patients in general in the state of Texas, people that don't really have the voice that are coming out here in this particular circumstance. And I am in support of this bill, House Bill 169. I'm a double board certified pain management physician and anesthesiologist. I practice full time here in Austin. I actually happen to be here to testify for something else, but I've been around the Capitol for a number of years to speak on behalf and testify on behalf of expansion of medical cannabis here in the state. When I saw that the decriminalization bills were being heard today, this seemed like a really good opportunity to come and speak. And when I say on behalf of my patients, it's really on behalf of many patients. I first started studying cannabis as a medicine in 2011, 2012 during my fellowship. It's actually my grand rounds topic. I had to be an expert in something, and at the time I thought it was just going to be good cocktail party conversation, and it was. But as I learned more about the research, I became more and more educated on the topic and realized the importance of how much this can actually work as a medicine. Now, the reason that I'm here to talk to you guys, because you guys this isn't a medical bill, and I understand that, but I've spoken with thousands of people about this topic. I've spoken with healthcare providers, doctors, patients as well. Patients are comfortable talking to me about it because I'm open to that discussion with patients. I don't tell people to break the law. People ask questions about medical cannabis, and people read about it, and it's in every single specialty of healthcare these days. You can read about it in every type of journal, and healthcare considers it a medicine. The reason this is so important, though, is it's legalized in so many states, and there are so many variations of how people can get something that can still have some form of cannabis in Texas. So what happens? We have patients, I get patients, geriatric patients, they go summer in Colorado, they come back, they talk to me, and they say, oh yeah, you know what? I found this while I was on my trip, and they pull out some gummy, and they're like, this has really been helping with my shoulder pain. I'm finally able to stop the anti-inflammatory, whatever. And I look at them, and I'm like, you know what? You don't realize this is a felony. You could get put in prison for what you're doing. And I would sincerely ask, and I've spoken with some of the legislators. I've spoken with a lot of y'all staffers, but again, I've also spoken with many professionals, whether it's in healthcare or in law, whatever, in business. Everybody knows somebody that has used, whether it's a vape pen, a compound, a gummy, some sort. And the fact of the matter is, it's our kids and it's our parents. There's a lot of people that are doing it, and whether we like it or not, whether it should be, doesn't change the fact that it is. And these people shouldn't be. These are the innocent people that are not even realizing the criminality of their actions. And I don't feel like they should be in a position where they could be locked up, because these aren't the types of people that deserve to be locked up. Fine the heck out of them if you want. But I don't think that this should be a criminal penalty that is going to put people in prison.
Thank you so much.
I really
That's
appreciate
great
it, so.
information, real life situations and stories, and I appreciate you standing up for your patients. Members, are there any questions for Dr. Marks? Thank you so much for being here.
I sincerely appreciate y'all's time. I know I signed up for a number of these bills because I'm not sure when I'm going to be back in here to talk about some of this stuff, so
Yes,
I may
sir.
have some other things to say. But
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
The chair calls Aldo Caldo. Okay, the chair calls Tony Lamar. Okay, they're not here. The chair calls Amelia Casas. Sorry, if you can correct me. If you could state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Collier and members. My name is Amelia Gasas. I'm the policy analyst with the Texas Fair Defense Project, and I am testifying on HB 169. I want to thank you so much, Mrs. T, for authoring this legislation. We fully support marijuana decriminalization, but the reason we're testifying on today is because we are very concerned that creating a Class C misdemeanor possession of marijuana offense could actually end up being worse for many of our clients, and rather than the status quo as it is right now. And this is because, unlike most other states, Class C fine-only tickets are criminal in nature, and so a Class C POM charge would carry all of the collateral consequences of conviction of any other drug offense. So this includes being disqualified from public housing, student financial aid, certain types of employment, and a lot more. These collateral consequences are often far worse than the criminal punishment itself. And so if we create a Class C offense, people would plead guilty to a drug offense by paying their ticket, and without realizing they're subjecting themselves to lifelong federal collateral consequences. And so really the only way to avoid these devastating consequences is to create a civil penalty instead. And we would be so happy to work with your office moving forward to try to make that happen. That's really all I have today. I urge the committee to please support legislation that would create a civil penalty instead. Thank you.
Well, would you agree that it's a step in the right direction by reducing the penalties?
I would say for a lot of folks it would be. It's definitely better than having a Class B, but we are just very cautious of a lot of folks being susceptible to this, since they won't have a lawyer and they'll just be pleading guilty by paying their ticket as they're
Members, any
supposed to.
questions? All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
The chair calls Liza Deonda Garcia. Okay, I'll just show them registering. Let's see, make sure I called everybody. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 169? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Chair Thompson to close. Thank you. If there's no objection, House Bill 169 will be left pending at this time. The chair lays out as pending business House Bill 2593 and recognizes its author, Speaker Pro Tem Joe Moody, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, House Bill 2593 is a very simple bill, Mr. Murr. It's actually going to make tens of thousands of charges much smarter and fairer in the state of Texas. And I know the first question you got, how in the world could a 15-page bill be simple? But mostly because those are cross-references that had to strike through for conforming changes. The bill simply does one thing. It makes all forms of THC the same under our criminal law. Right now, the form of THC that most of us are familiar with is leafy marijuana that's smoked. Possessing it goes from a Class B up the weight scale into the felony ranges. But increasingly, what we're seeing people use is THC in liquid or wax form, which is being smoked in e-cigarettes and other devices. So it's the exact same chemical in a sense, but under the law, possession of it, no matter what weight, is a felony. So my bill simply brackets these other forms of THC out from penalty group 2, which otherwise includes hallucinogens, and it creates a new penalty group 2B. The new penalty group has the same punishment ladder as marijuana, so a very familiar construct that we have in our law. I want to be clear about two things. One thing, this is not talking about synthetic marijuana like spice or K2. That's housed in penalty group 2A. It's already been created and cropped out and treated differently. Two, this bill really isn't about whether we want to decriminalize or legalize or do anything else related to marijuana. It's just about right-sizing the penalties and making sure our laws are fair and that they make sense. To Texans who have the same substance, or two Texans who have the same substance, shouldn't face these drastically different penalties because one has it in a joint and one has it in an e-cig. I mean, that's the most basic way I can put it. This is really a pressing issue for young Texans. They're overwhelmingly using this form of THC. Many of them are being branded felons very early in their life, destroying their opportunities for education, housing, and jobs. And I've certainly represented some of them who've been very shocked to find out that they are now in felony court. And if they're a 17-year-old and on a campus, they're facing a very serious felony offense because of the bump up on a campus. And obviously, we still have 17-year-olds being treated in the adult system. So I don't think any of us would look at a 21-year-old with a Starbucks in one hand and an e-cig with marijuana in the other as a felon, but that is the system we have today. I don't think it makes sense. I think we're ruining young lives needlessly. Certainly happy to answer any questions, and if there aren't any, then I'd reserve my right to close.
Thank you, Speaker Moody, for this bill. In fact, is it true that sometimes somebody may not know if there's THC in their e-cigarette? Like they may not know if that's part of the substance that's in the liquid.
Well, very possible. I mean, we have a bunch of products out in the market, and they may or may not know.
And so then they may not knowingly possess the THC, but yet they could be charged with the felony?
Certainly could be found in that circumstance. I mean, I think the more common circumstance is this is the typical way that younger people are using this substance nowadays, and because of the way the law is constructed, we don't have the stair step up through the misdemeanor world like we do with other forms of marijuana. And so I think this is mainly right sizing and bringing our law into reality, and hopefully treating the substance uniformly across the board.
Absolutely. Representative Crockett?
I just want to clarify what I'm hearing in your layout. If a kid has a gummy and there's THC in an itty bitty gummy, then that is going to be punished under the Health and Safety Code as possession of a controlled substance, and the lowest offense level that it could be would be a state jail. But if for some reason they had, say, up to 4 ounces of actual flour, which arguably would be larger than just this itty bitty gummy, then they would only be facing a punishment of, say, a Class A misdemeanor. So you could have a lot more flour technically than the amount that.
Oh yeah, that's certainly. I mean, we do everything by weight. I mean, most of our all of our drug penalties are done by weight, and this construct in our current law upends that. To your point, your illustration is a perfect one in which you're going to get a strange result for a different amount of substance. But that is the way the law is working right now, and again, this committee is going to consider a lot of policy in this arena. Not trying to weigh in on legality or whatever. This is right-sizing the punishment. This is recognizing what the reality is in our communities and treating it like this. I think a lot of prosecutors are figuring out ways to bump these things down into their misdemeanor world, but the problem is you have a felony arrest on your record, right? So anyway, I think it's a pretty straightforward fix. I'm certainly willing to, if there's some suggestions on any changes, certainly willing to work with anybody that has a concern. I know it's a newish concept being brought before you, but happy to work with anybody on it.
Thank you, Speaker. We'll call you back up to close.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The chair calls Jonathan Copeland. And Mr. Copeland, could you state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill, please?
My name is Jonathan Copeland. I'm with Cannabis Reform Houston. I'm also speaking on behalf of myself. You should be receiving 3 affidavits. One is from me, one is from my grandmother, who I'm also speaking on behalf, and one is on a classmate who has a record for less than a gram. I am for this bill.
Okay.
I have if you read on the first page, I have a deliberating condition, and it was caused by a turbulent flight. When I was flying, I fell asleep and I wasn't popping my ears. And so I have to wear cotton in my ears most of the time in loud situations, like outside. When I was walking here, somebody's brakes were squeaking. I have to wear ear protection whenever I'm doing dishes, or I cannot be in the room if somebody else is doing the dishes. The only thing that I have learned is stop the ringing in my ears and stop the sensitivity is if I take THC in high concentrates before going to sleep. I really need something like this to pass. It's very difficult, and I'm sure you can see in my affidavit there, which I came up here without one. Oh, no, I did not. There's no FDA approval, no FDA-approved treatment for tinnitus as of right now. I fear that if my condition were to get any worse, that it may become very unbearable for me to continue living in the state of Texas. There's others with my condition who have considered suicide as an option, and I don't want to even think about that, considering my dad was a vet from the Iraq War and suffered from PTSD and had that fate. Cannabis relieves my anxiety, my insomnia, which the insomnia is worse. It's like a circle that creates anxiety the next day and leads to depression. I thought I was crazy until I realized that it was all related to the neurological condition. I also brought a letter from Grandma on the second page. She's a 69-year-old woman with osteoarthritis, and she prefers THC as a form of pain relief, as opposed to ibuprofen, naproxen, Tylenol. That's all I have to say about this particular bill, but I'll be back here in a moment testifying for my rep,
Thank
Paul.
you so much.
Thank you.
Members, are there any questions for Mr. Copeland? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. The chair calls Latanya Whittington.
Hello again, everyone. Again, my name is Latanya Whittington, and I represent myself, Cannabis Reform in Houston. And as always, I support every bill that Moody presents. He represents the cannabis community, and he understands how we need this as our medicine to survive. And what I'm going to do is speak about my issues and my condition, because this is what you need to hear, what comes from me. I'm a patient who needs cannabis for quality of life. I was diagnosed with trigeminal neuralgia in 2015, and it is hell to live with. I've lost all the teeth at the top right side of my face due to the condition. No one really knows what this is, doctors or nurses. Only neurosurgeons and neurologists can tell you that I have this. It's a nerve damage on the right top area of my face. It's a chronic and a debilitating condition. It's the seventh nerve, a sensation to my brain. My triggers are touching my face, drinking cold or hot liquids, eating, talking, encountering breezes, smiling, living, washing my face, putting on my makeup. Right now, I'm not having an episode, thank God, because I'm able to talk to you today. And I know the reason why this is so, because this message needs to be heard. I have short mile attacks or longer. Right now, as I said, I'm in a short state. Mainly because of the cannabis and the concentrates with high THC level. I am doing better at this time. I'm telling you. Okay? When the episodes come, they're very scary. I have severe jabbing pains. It feels like electric shocks, spontaneous attacks at no warning, unable to speak. This was me during Christmas. It was horrible. I had to go to emergency the day after Christmas. I pushed it just to be with my daughter and my husband. It was hell. They want to go back and do surgery. It's called microvascular decompression. It results in them inserting a sponge going through the back of my head. And I had 26 stitches in my head. This is what I went through. It was a massive surgery. I learned that hemp, oil, wax, and edibles, it helps me with this condition. The doctor wants me to take 21 different types of medications. I would not be able to stand up here and talk to you guys today to plead my case, okay? But I choose to use cannabis and I choose to have my life. It would destroy my liver. I have a 15-year-old daughter and I have a husband who loves and cares for me very much, and they want me here. And I want our voices to be heard. This year, 21, we need legalization of cannabis in Texas. It shouldn't have to move. I shouldn't have to move out of state to get my medicine. I please ask you, as your constituent, to support this cannabis bill that my boy Moody has put up again. I appreciate him. Too many people need this. And, you know, they need to stop taking away our medicine. Big Pharma needs to get out of this, you know, because we need our medicine. And, you know, so that we can have quality of life. I hear you ringing. Free the weed in Texas. And, you know, I thank you for listening to me again.
Yes, ma'am. I'm so glad that you were able to get that diagnosis, and I'm sorry it's been since 2015 that you've been experiencing this?
It's hell.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
wanted to kill myself at one point. I wanted to end my life, but cannabis saved my life. And there's plenty of people that could tell you. I go on Facebook, I put my story out there so people can see. And that's why I have Cannabis Reform in Houston. We have 5,000 members because they want their voices heard too. And I'm going to stand up for them. As long as I have breath that I can speak, I'm going to let you know that cannabis needs to be legalized in Texas
Thank you.
to help us.
Yes, thank you. Representative Crockett?
Just briefly, I just want to highlight something that I feel like your testimony stated without overstating it, which is that, depending on where everybody stands on this committee on cannabis,
Yes.
what I hear you saying is that actually using cannabis could reduce the overall medical cost for so many people.
Yes, it could.
Because you testified that, the doctors want you to take 20-something prescriptions.
20 prescriptions.
And you also testified about the fact that there was potentially the necessity for a surgery.
I need to go again. They want to do another surgery. And I'm paying out of my pocket. Big Pharma is getting my money.
But you'd agree with me, even if people kind of disagree with cannabis overall, that from a financial standpoint,
Right.
we can actually help so many Texans if we at least give them the option, because it actually may reduce the burden on those that may not be able to afford medications, traditional medications, I should say.
Dispensaries in Texas. That is what we're all fighting for, That would be a lower cost than going to buy 15 or 20 pills. When you can go to a dispensary and get the cannabis, get the oils, get the concentrate that you need, instead of having all of those pills that's going to kill my liver, my pancreas, and all of these things. I want to live. And a lot of people, we want to live. This is why we come up here and talk to y'all. You guys are the rule makers, and we are the constituents. And we're asking you guys to listen to us. I don't know how much I can beg and plead.
And I don't mean to cut you off, because I'm
Okay.
sure you're going to be back anyway.
Yes.
Because there's a few marijuana bills.
Most definitely.
But I want to clarify if there are any members on this committee that have concerns about long-term use, things like that. It seems like what I'm hearing from your testimony is that you've used this more than one day.
Yes, I
You've
have.
used this kind of for some amount of time. And as far as the benefits and the cost-benefit analysis, you'd agree with me that from a long-term standpoint, you've not seen negative effects on your body. In fact, you've only seen positive effects. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's correct. Even people can see me, my complexion, the way I talk, the way I move has improved since I was diagnosed with this trigeminal neuralgia. And let me tell you.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but Representative Crockett, let's keep it to the subject matter of the bill. The bill talks about penalties and so forth, so let's just keep it there.
So just to clarify, and then we'll see you later, I'm sure.
Yes, you will.
This bill, while it won't legalize it, it would make sure that someone like you
Yes.
potentially would not be facing, a felony.
Because I'm going to do everything that I need to do to get my medicine, regardless to whatever rules you guys decide. And I'm just telling you, that's the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Representative Crockett. Bring it back. She's a good attorney. All right. The chair calls Emily Garrett. All right. The chair calls Karen Reeves. And Ms. Reeves, if you could state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Okay, my name is Karen Reeves. I'm here to represent myself. I'm here to represent the Syntax Community Outreach. I'm here today to to testify in support of reducing penalties for concentrates. I've been here, this is my 4th session to come and testify and talk about how cannabis helps me and helps a lot of people across the state. And I've just recently, since the last session, I've been able to try concentrates for my medical conditions. And it's amazing how much different flower and concentrate helps. But I turned in 3 different testimonies that I've given previously, and right now I just want to read one of them really quick because I'll be back to talk about some other things. So even though you may be reducing penalties for different things, flower or concentrates, I want to ask you today, what will happen to me if my home is raided? What will happen to me if I'm arrested? I may think I have a medical defense because I am a medical patient, but I just happen to live in the great state of Texas. I'm here to tell you that I'm still going to be arrested. I'm still going to be charged. And I'm here to say I am scared. And I know I am not the only one. Many Texans live in fear every day. I believe I would not survive an arrest or jail time due to my medical conditions. I may not look like a medical patient. However, the main reason I've consumed cannabis for over 45 years is it's keeping me alive. It's keeping me with the will to want to live. Because many years I didn't even want to get up out of bed. So I'm here today to talk about reducing penalties for concentrates. It would make so much difference in patients that need concentrates. Flower is great, but if you have chronic conditions like myself, heart condition, high blood pressure, I've had open heart surgery, I've had 3 back surgeries. We'll be here later to talk more about that. But I support Moody's bill 100%, and the problem I have with all these bills is why are all these people writing different bills? Why can't everybody come together and write one comprehensive bill that our law enforcement can understand, that we can understand? Because right now I'm standing here, I'm a little confused. I know this would bring the possession down for concentrates, but we're still going to have a criminal record. We're still going to look like bad people. If you look at me in the eye, and I could look at each one of you in the eye, I'm a good person. And just because I've used cannabis for over 45 years so I can have the will to live, and have a family and be happy and work a couple of days a week? Does that make me a bad person? Do I deserve to live in fear every day? I would think not. And I hope this committee will take those things into consideration because having any type of cannabis is scary. The only thing dangerous in Texas about having cannabis is getting caught with it.
And Ms. Reeves, thank you so much. I completely agree about so many bills being filed on the same subject. I completely agree with that. Every member has, their right to do that.
Yes.
To their constituents.
I appreciate that.
Members, are there any questions for Ms. Reeves? Thank you. Appreciate you. Love the passion. The chair calls Lori Zapinski. Lori Zabinski. All right, we'll just put her down for testifying, for registering not to testify. The chair calls Dr. Robert Marks. I don't see the doctor anymore. I'm going to go on to the next one. Maybe he's in the overflow. The chair calls Alicia Castillo.
Good evening, Chair and members. My name is Alicia Castillo. I'm a policy analyst with Texas Criminal Justice Coalition, and I am for the bill. So I want to talk again about the students that Speaker Moody spoke about earlier. So state law does require that schools expel students who are found using or possessing or selling felony level controlled substances like THC. And unfortunately, with the rise in the popularity of these products, we've seen a sharp increase in expulsions and kids being sent to JJAPs. Since 2018, there's been a 60% increase in kids going to JJAPs due mainly to vaping charges. And it's extremely disappointing knowing that that's following years of a steady decline that we were seeing in students being sent to JJAPs. And so the consequences were mentioned before. It's not small. This is a felony offense that could potentially follow a student the rest of their lives. But it's also important to note the cost of doing this, continuing to do it. So we know that some school districts, definitely not all, but some school districts have actually invested in the testing products to test the kids' vape products and make sure there's no THC in it. Which is disheartening knowing that just 100 miles down the road, so this is happening in Georgetown ISD, for example, 100 miles down the road in San Antonio, students are calling and telling me that they don't have toilet paper. So I'm not sure that that's a wise investment that we're making there. But additionally, this means money to post bail for kids. This means money in court fees for their families. And then this is really detrimental to our TJJD and our JJ AEPs because a result of this sharp increase in kids, it means a decline in the average daily rate reimbursement that they receive. So just from the last biennium, it was a decrease from $96 a day per student to $60 per day, which is devastating when we think about what the resources that kids are supposed to be accessing in their education system. All that being said, I'm hoping that this bill, if nothing else, will be considered favorably for the students of Texas. Thank you.
Members, are there any questions for the witness? Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
The chair calls Renee Perez. Renee Perez? Renee Perez? Okay, we'll put him down as registering but not to testify. Chair calls Elizabeth Miller. And Ms. Miller, if you could state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill, please.
You bet. My name is Elizabeth Miller. I am a member of the Libertarian Party of Texas and the SD 10 rep. I am also ably represented by Representative Kaysen, and I represent the members of SD 10 who would love you guys to carve back the drug horn anyway. But I speak for myself, if I may. I would like, Dr. Mark spoke earlier about patients who don't fall under the program, and I am one of them. I have a rare genetic, rare genetic syndrome that causes a variety of issues. It's called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And one of the problems it causes is, chronic pain is its main feature. And I require THC to manage that. Another issue it causes is a sleep disorder where I have, they call them seizures. It makes it sound worse than it is, but I struggle with sleep and wake and managing that, and THC turns out to be fabulous for that. We think some of that may have to do with the endocannabinoid system. I don't want to get too nerdy on you guys, but that's part of why I need. I also need it for appetite management and things, but I require THC, which is not in the program. I have conditions which are not listed in the program. You're never going to get to my rare disease. Hopefully you will get to chronic pain. Please, please get to chronic pain. But until you do, I'm not in the program. And I also have something as a consequence called mast cell activation, where if certain things can trigger an anaphylactic response, and one of those things is mold, so I can't use flour. And I can't smoke. So I have to use a product that falls within the broad definition of concentrate. So I have to commit a felony every day to function, including to be here. It took me several years to be here. I've been aiming to get out of bed and be here for a long, long time. And I can't leave Texas. I can't practice my chosen profession outside. If I get well enough, again, I cannot practice my chosen profession. Y'all will be shocked to learn I'm a lawyer. I reek of it. I apologize. And I can't leave Texas because my elderly parents are here. Please don't tell them I just described them that way. And so leaving is difficult. I just don't have the means right now. And so I am here telling you all I commit a felony every day. On the record. I'm taking that risk by choice, hoping that will move you. And I don't want to take up any more of your time. I'm sorry to take up so much. I appreciate you all so much for everything you do, sticking your necks out on this committee. Please continue to do it, even if we don't get the whole win. We need you. Just to be encouraged, and I'm happy to take any questions.
And Ms. Miller, what is your position on the bill again?
I am absolutely for it. Thank you, Representative Moody.
All right, members, any questions? Senator Crockett.
What I heard in your testimony is that you would like for your representative to support legislation such as this.
He knows that. May I speak to your earlier question? I meant to.
So long as we're referring to this bill.
This bill.
Yep.
This bill, changing this, will allow me to continue to address my medical concerns in a way that is much cheaper
Oh, yeah.
for the state and the county in which we live. There are people in my condition that are on dozens of medicines. They're on feeding tubes. They can't get out of bed and come here, okay? I'm on 2 prescription medications. My doctors are blown away by that. They all want to add to the list, though. They all say, oh, that's amazing. Let's add one. No, let's not. I'm able to do that because of this medicine. And the only thing halting me from healing right now is the fear of arrest, because I could be the next Marvin Scott.
Yeah.
If they arrest me, they put my hands behind my back, my shoulder could pop out. I could get stressed out and have an anaphylactic event. So the next Marvin Scott could be a little old white lady, I'm just telling you.
We may get some, never mind, I'm not even going to get on that.
Yeah, sorry.
But but no, I appreciate you, and I hear you when you say that there's a cost-saving benefit to this, and I think it's important for the members to know that this isn't just a bunch of young folk that are trying to have a good time. There are definitely people that are in need, and while this doesn't necessarily address that, it minimizes the risk to someone like you who is in a very honorable field, if I may add,
Well, I don't know.
as an attorney, because that could have a detrimental effect on you even being able to continue practicing law if you are somehow convicted of a felony.
It's absolutely affecting my employment opportunities just being out.
Absolutely. For sure. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Chair calls Renee Perez. I think I saw him come back.
We decline.
Can you just come up here and just say that? Do you have to say that? Oh, then never mind. I'm just going to put you down as not testifying. The Committee on Criminal Jurisprudence will come back to order. We're still on House Bill 2593, and appreciate everyone's patience. This is the only time people have to testify, so we want to accommodate people to be able to have their voices heard. So thank you so much for allowing that. The chair calls Liza Deanda Garcia. So I'm so sorry. If you could come state your name. If you could state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill, ma'am.
My name is Lisa Deanda Garcia. I came last time during the sessions, and I believe I met with you, and I spoke to you about my brother. I'm for this bill because there are so many people that are struggling. I'm a licensed massage therapist, and I started using cannabis about 5 years ago, and I was totally against it. I threw people out of my homes. I didn't want people nowhere near me if they were smoking this. I mean, it was just because it was against the law. I was told in school it was against the law. Just say no, don't do it. It was against the law. And I had a brother, and he was smoking pot, and he was smoking pot because he had fallen and he had hurt himself, and he didn't want to take opiates and the pills that the doctors were giving him because he didn't like the way it made him feel. And he would cry to me, but it's against the law. You can't do it. You got to do what the doctors say because they're the doctors, they know. My father and my stepmother disapproved so much that he finally gave in because they were afraid of him going to jail. And I'm here to tell you that in 2017, he died, fentanyl overdose. And in a few years, I started smoking cannabis because I'm a licensed massage therapist, and I had these 2 fingers locked up on me all the way down my arm, and I was driving home from working all day, and I couldn't move my fingers. I was having trouble with the steering wheel because they were like this, and I was like, what the heck? And somebody told me to take cannabis, to try it. I said, but it's against the law, and I don't want to do that. I can't do it. But the pain was so bad, and I had to return the next day to work more. I had 8 more clients that I was trying to heal, to help, because everybody deals with pain. We don't get to the bottom of the pain. The pain is from our food and for all these other things, and everybody knows it. People don't like to talk about it, but it's the food that we're eating and what we're consuming. And people live in fear now, and I'm in anxiety. I drove down here from Cleveland, Texas. I live in the country. I live a very peaceful life. I don't drive anymore, and I haven't been able to practice what I do, unless I'm smoking pot. You know, smoking marijuana, cannabis, whatever y'all want to call it. But if I don't smoke it, I can't function anymore. And now I understand where my brother was at. And I understand where a lot of these people are at. And I have the gift of feeling as a licensed massage therapist, and I can come around people and I can feel their pain. I know where they're hurting. I know where if his knee's hurting or their neck or their back. I know. This has got to change. And Moody, thank you so very much for trying to change this. And thank you, Ms. Caller, for allowing me to testify. And I'm going to be back, and I'm going to keep on, and I'm not going to stop, because this law has got to stop. This is a plant. God put all these plants on this earth for us to heal ourselves with. I work with essential oils on a regular basis with my clients, and they work. They work. We have got to put those back in place. That was the original medicine before pharmaceuticals came aboard. That was the original stuff. I'm for his bill.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2593? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Speaker Pro Tem Moody to close.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. Appreciate your time and attention. I just want to note one thing. I know there was a witness that talked about the number of bills and the confusing nature of things, and I certainly understand that. And Madam Chair, you have multiple bills on this subject matter and then multiple bills on various other subject matters. So I know there's a lot that y'all are trying to weigh in. I want to change the lens on how we should view that, though, because when I first started here, which is getting further and further in the rearview mirror at this point, bills like this were reserved for the last possible hearing of the Committee on Criminal Jurisprudence, and that was considered a victory, that a handful of bills were heard that had no real chance of going anywhere, that didn't, no advocates were given a real opportunity to talk about, and members knew that they were never going to have to vote on them or think critically about them. So while there are a lot of bills moving around, and this is one of them, and I hope that you give it the right to due consideration I think it deserves, I would say that's a good thing. Because these bills are being heard earlier in session, they're given an opportunity. We've voted bills off the House floor on this subject matter. And so while I know that can get frustrating, get confusing, because we touch on so many different avenues in terms of cannabis policy, the world has changed in this building in a very short time in terms of the seriousness we give to this subject matter. So I want to say thank you for doing that, because it's easy for us to laugh this subject away. And many people try to do that, and they do that in the press quite often. But when you hear about the suffering here, and you hear about people and the problems they run into, you hear about young people being incarcerated and having their lives ruined, that's not funny to me. And it shouldn't be funny to anybody else. And so I'm proud of the work that's been done. I'm proud of your leadership to move these bills forward, and certainly willing to, if there are questions and concerns about this particular effort, always willing to work with folks. So I want to let you know, extend that offer to anybody on the committee. And if there's no other questions, I would close on the bill.
Thank you so much, Speaker Moody, for that. Members, are there any questions? If there's no objection, House Bill 2593 will be left pending at this time. Good night. The chair lays out House Bill 498 and recognizes its author, Representative Jean Wu, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm not even going to open my book packet because this is the fourth session I've laid this bill out. When I first laid this bill out, it was maybe too radical for the times, and now I'm maybe behind the times. To me, this was always a middle ground sort of solution for the marijuana debate. It is not a legalization. It is a reduction in criminalization. So essentially what we would do is anything under an ounce would create a new class of marijuana C, which would make it a citation level offense like speeding tickets, running a stop sign, et cetera, et cetera. Generally, it is like all Class Cs. It is still arrestable, but hopefully, most officers would have the decency to not arrest and simply just confiscate the materials, put in the evidence, and issue a citation. So the person can go to JP court or Muni court, and they can do whatever the court wants them to do to get it deferred on their case, and pay a small fine to the city or to the county. The local municipality can make some money, and then everyone just goes on their way and the case is dismissed. And we avoid the unnecessary collateral consequences of jail time, of people losing their jobs, of people adding major history onto their criminal records. And don't forget, 2 sessions ago, I passed a bill that basically made it so that all Class C records are destroyed after 5 years. So this is, I always carry this no matter what other legalization bills are around, because this is an offering to the committee members and to the legislature. If people are not comfortable with doing full legalization, and I fully support full legalization, but I would rather have reduced collateral consequences rather than nothing. And this is sort of where my bill is. I'm offering this to the committee and say, like, look, take your pick, right? And that's it.
Members, any questions? All right, we'll call you back up to close.
Thank you.
The chair calls Aldo Caldo. All right, we'll put that person down, not testifying. The chair calls Jonathan Copeland. Mr. Copeland, you state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill, please.
Hello again. My name is Jonathan Copeland. I represent Cannabis Reform of Houston. I also represent myself. I also represent the 3 other people in the affidavits that you received. I am for the bill. However, when I say I'm for the bill, it doesn't mean that I think it's enough. I do recognize that Steve Toth, my representative, has proposed House Bill 99, which has the amount set to 2 ounces.
Can you just talk about this bill?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So I feel that the amount in this bill should be more than this. And I also feel that considering how our Lieutenant Governor has a record of who he approves bills of and who he doesn't, that we should really consider what the conservative representative has versus the one out of Harris County, in which Harris County has a statute of, I believe it's 4 ounces before you are arrested. So we should really consider increasing this bill, because 1 ounce is just, it's kind of an insult coming from the Democratic Party, to be honest. And I mean, I support y'all, but we need more than this.
Thank you. Any questions, members? All right. The chair calls Emily Garrick. All right, we'll put her down, not testifying. The chair calls Jacqueline Finkel.
Hello. Back up again. My name is Jax Finkel. I'm representing not only myself, but Texas Normal and Foundation for an Informed Texas. I'm only speaking on the bills where I've been requested, so I'm going to be super quick because I know you guys have this data I've dropped off with you. But I think it's really important for us to look back in history. 2019, over 45,000 Texans were arrested for minor possession, and 30,000 of them were convicted. During that same time, according to DPS records, 89% of car thefts, 92% of burglaries, and 77% of rapes and attempted rapes went unsolved. So I'm just going to let that percolate for a second. And I also want to say that in a recent conference, Peter Stout, PhD, who works with the Houston Forensic Science Center, said that funds for rape kits are being used to test for THC potency for charges. This is not the right priority that we need to set. I think that we need to make sure that law enforcement can spend their time and their effort on policing violent crimes, property crimes, and in the same time, we can save $311 million a year on taxpayer money that is being spent to prosecute these people. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Okay, and Ms. Finkel, are you on for or against the bill?
I am for the bill. You know, I would like to just say, Representative Wu, you've been doing this for several sessions, and you say that maybe you're a little behind the times now, but what I would say is Texas hasn't changed these laws since 1973, and it's time to update our statutes. So, sir, thank you for everything that you've been doing, and I hope that you guys will move this to the Senate so that they can do the work there, too.
Thank you so much. Was there any questions for Ms. Finkel? Okay, thank you. The chair calls Tony Lamar. Okay, we'll just put Mr. Lamar down as not testifying. The chair calls Amelia Casas.
Hello again. Thank you, Chair Collier. My name is Amelia Casas. I am here on behalf of the Texas Fair Defense Project, and we are testifying on this legislation. So I just want to reiterate again some of our concerns with moving a Class B misdemeanor offense to a Class C. This could end up being a lot worse for a lot of our client base. I completely understand where Representative Wu and others are coming with this legislation. I really do think it's commendable, and just really reiterating the collateral consequences on the federal level that will still be very much impacting a lot of folks who will be arrested or cited with a Class C. I can go into several other reasons, but I will wait on time and come back again for some other bills. But I would please advocate for a civil penalty model rather than a Class C model. Thank you.
All right, members, any questions? Thank you so much. Thank you. The chair calls Renee Perez. Okay, so Mr. Perez, we're going to put you down as registering not to testify. The chair calls Karen Reeves.
Hello, thanks again for hearing my testimony. I think my name is Karen Reeves, and I represent myself and the Syntax Community Outreach. I believe I signed up as neutral on this bill. Only the reason I said neutral is 1 ounce is not really that much cannabis. It's 28 grams, and a lot of people, that's about how much they could use for a month, and a lot of people, that would take them forever to use that amount. But my point is, Jax was saying that how many people were arrested in 2019, 45,000 people. And when my son was arrested in 2019, there was over 60,000 people arrested. And so that got me upset, and I started a social media campaign called Action for Alex, because I wanted to help bring awareness to the fact that my son was the face of one out of over 60,000 others arrested that same year. And that's, to me, was unacceptable. And I couldn't believe that more people weren't standing up and speaking out. So I'm proud to be here today to stand up for those that are scared to come to the Capitol to speak up. It's okay to come and testify and write in support of these bills, write your legislators. I want to speak out to the people at home that you're not going to get arrested for speaking to your legislator about reducing penalties or getting medical on board. We need people to speak up, and I appreciate you guys bringing all these bills to the committee. But the fact is that how do we choose? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Do we support 1 ounce, 2 ounce, 4 ounces? You know, our group, the Syntax Community Outreach, we support ending prohibition in Texas. I mean, come on. So many states have changed their laws and statutes against possession, and I do believe that 1 ounce is not really that much. I do support the representatives' efforts, and again, I just wish more of the representatives would get together on the off time and try to get one great bill and bring it back next session if that's what we have to do. Thank you.
I certainly understand your concern. You know, one thing that we always got to be mindful of is that, yes, we got to get it through committee, through calendars, on the House floor, and then we got to get it through the Senate, same process, and then come back. But we also have to get the governor. The governor has to make that final decision. So, you know, all these things are taken into account when we're talking about what kind of bills, you know, what incremental. I think one witness talked about incremental change earlier, and so that's just the.
So if I could do one more shout out to everybody at home, if you support this bill, please contact your governor and your lieutenant governor and ask them to support this bill once it gets in the Senate.
Yes, ma'am. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 498? I think there's going to be one more witness. The committee is going to stand at ease. To order. We're still on House Bill 498. The chair calls Coretta Brown.
Hello, my name is Coretta Brown. I am neutral on this bill, but I do support it. I'm neutral on the bill, but I support. Okay, so I support the bill.
Do you want me to change your testimony?
Yes.
I think what you're trying to say is you support the concept of what it's trying to do?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I support the concept of what the bill is trying to do.
But you stay neutral on the bill?
I stay neutral on the bill.
Yes, ma'am.
And what I want to state is marijuana is legal in some states. And those states where it is now legal, they're not showing any negative results from marijuana being legal, right? We can talk all day long about the medical benefits of it. We can talk all day long about the financial attributes of it, and we can talk all day long about how people are being incarcerated for it. But what I want to say is I hope that Texas catch up to a lot of the other states, because it is a plant, and people do not need to be serving felony time for a plant. That's it.
Members, are there any questions for the witness? Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 498? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Wu to close on his bill.
Thank you so much. Time is a funny thing. When I first laid out this bill, I think my second session, I had all sorts of law enforcement and come up here and say that this would cause the apocalypse, and almost nobody testified for it. And now I have marijuana advocates who don't like my bill and are not for it. So it's here's why we did why I did what I did. Number one, Joe Moody. Speaker Pro Tem Moody had a civil penalties bill that came out of this committee, and when the bill got to the floor, my bill is what he changed it to. He changed it from a civil penalties bill to a 1 ounce Class C, because that's what he believed would actually pass the body. The governor's office has indicated that this is something that the governor would consider signing, would consider it, right? And not other ones. Once again, I've said this before, I would love to see a full legalization bill. I would love to get some tax dollars for our schools and many other things. But I think politically, this is what is acceptable to the majority of the body, which you need to pass the bill. I know one of the witnesses said that, you know, there's concern that if we make this a Class C, then people won't have lawyers and people will take convictions. People are taking convictions now. And people go to jail now for small amounts of marijuana. As a former prosecutor, I would just say that 1 ounce is actually quite a bit of marijuana. It's 1 ounce is a good sized sandwich bag stuffed full. And 1 ounce covers about 99.9% of cases in misdemeanor court. When I was a prosecutor, I can count on one hand the total number of times I handled a Class A marijuana case. It's kind of one of those weird things that most people either have a tiny amount with them or they have a truck. It's rarely in between. However that works, I don't know. I don't deal weed. But it is what it is. 1 ounce covers the vast majority of people, everyday users. And that's it.
Members, are there any questions?
I think everyone's tired.
Thank you. If there's no objection, House Bill 498 will be left pending at this
So much.
time.
Chair lays out House Bill 439 and recognizes Chair Collier to explain Representative Canales' bill.
I'm so sorry. Thank you so much, members. I didn't know the bill number. It's not my bill, so thank you again for the opportunity to lay out House Bill 439 on behalf of Chairman Terry Canales. House Bill 439 attempts to deal with the disparity between the penalties for possession of marijuana and the possession of marijuana concentrate. Decades ago, when we set the penalty for concentrates, they were not very common in our state. The prevalence and use of marijuana concentrates has increased in our state markedly, especially among young people. Texans are going to legal states, buying small amounts of these concentrates, bringing them back to Texas, and becoming felons for life. The damage current penalties can wreak on our young people are unethical at best. This bill simply brings the penalties for marijuana concentrate in line with regular marijuana and ensures we are not locking people away for small amounts of drugs. I stand for questions. No, I don't. And there are none. I reserve the right to close.
Members, are there questions for Chair Collier? Thank you, Chair Collier. Who's the first one? Chair calls Karen Reeves with Centex Community Outreach, neutral on the bill. Karen Reeves here. Chair calls David Bass for the bill. Please state your name, whom you represent, and your position on the bill, sir.
I brought some props.
Thank you. Can you state your name, who you
Yes.
represent, and your position on the bill?
David Bass. I represent myself, and I'm for the bill. So I have provided you a recipe for marijuana brownies. The reason this is relevant to me personally is because I've had 3 cancer surgeries in the last 5 years. And so instead of using the large pill bottle of pain meds that my surgeon gave me for my recovery, I used marijuana brownies, and they were very effective. And so I didn't have to use all those pills, was my objective. I don't want to take all those pills. And so if you'll look at the page that I marked with the pink marker, I'll explain what Representative Canales hopefully is working to achieve. So when a person wants to make cannabis brownies to use for chronic pain, this is the recipe. Butter, eggs, sugar, flour, chocolate, and 4 grams of cannabis. And so the person might have a 1/4 ounce of cannabis flower, which is a Class B misdemeanor. And then the person would take some cannabis from this jar and grind it up in a grinder. And then this container would be able to hold 4 grams of cannabis flower ground up. And that's a Class B misdemeanor, 6 months in jail for 4 grams of cannabis flower. But when the person making the brownies takes the butter, the eggs, the sugar, the flour, the chocolate, and puts it in a larger bowl than this, and then puts the 4 grams of cannabis flower into the bowl of these ingredients and cooks it in the oven and creates brownies, then magically this 4 grams of cannabis flower, which was a Class B misdemeanor, becomes a very serious felony. And so the person could get 6 months in prison for 4 grams of flour, but 2 to 20 years for the brownies. Because if the person is arrested, law enforcement charges them with the weight of all the ingredients, the butter, the eggs, the sugar, the flour, the chocolate, and 4 grams of flour. But it's still 4 grams of flour.
Thank you for that explanation, sir. Members, are there any questions for this witness?
Thank you.
Chair next calls Emily Garrick, Texas Fair Defense Project, for the bill. Chair next calls Jacqueline Finkel, Texas Normal and Foundation for an Informed Texas, for the bill. Please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
My name is Jax Finkel, and I am representing myself, Texas Normal, and Foundation for an Informed Texas, and we support the representative's bill. So Dave mentioned this brownie recipe, and you might be wondering, why is this important to this conversation? And I want to tell you a story of someone in Williamson County, a case that I worked on many years ago, about 6 years ago now. A 19-year-old boy was arrested with cannabis brownies. They weighed out to be 1.5 pounds once they weighed it, and that included actually the tray it was also in. So flour, eggs, chocolate, tray that it's on, right? And he was facing 99 years in jail for that. And the community in Williamson County, when they heard about it, was very upset. And they were able to secure him a lawyer pro bono. There were protests on the county court steps. How could someone be facing life in prison for brownies that have a plant in them? Ultimately, after many weeks of working on this, he was able to get a special deal, and he is still currently working off his parole and trying desperately to be a dad and a part of his community. Now, he will be saddled with this felony for his entire life, and not everyone is as lucky as him. Not everyone has a community that will band around them and support them and fight for them. And so this bill is extremely important because it addresses the additives and the dilutants so that you're only charged with the actual illicit material. Now, we can argue back and forth what we think if cannabis should be illicit or not, but this is extremely important to make sure that when people are being charged, they are not charges that are blown out of proportion. So I just wanted to share that with you. I also will note Chair Collier, who is, I think, stepped away for a second, representing Representative Canales. We did have a definition question that our lawyers did reach out to Canales's office about, and we do hope to be able to figure that out with him. So we do support this bill, and if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Members, are there any questions for this witness? Yes, Representative. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Representative Crockett.
Thank you so much for being here. I fully, before the room gets in an uproar, I fully support full decrim, full legalization, just to be clear. and I know we're not talking about that right now. So as we're dealing with this bill, though, I was curious as to what I'm guessing you work with normal overall, which you guys are everywhere. This kind of confused me, only because when I think of, and I love the brownie recipe, just to be clear. When I think of baking something in, right? If we're baking it in, I don't know what the science is behind actually being able to pull it out, which I think is one reason that the law has always been, all the dilutants and whatnot, and they kind of just, because it's, I don't know the science behind how easy it is to say, now that it's baked in the brownie, let me pull it out, let me separate how much of this is sugar, chocolate, eggs, butter, regular flour, and then THC. I don't know that.
So while I'm not intimately aware of all of the details of how that works, and I could find that out for you, in many of the states that have a regulated cannabis market, they have third-party testing that verifies the amount of cannabinoids that are inside of the product, and usually it uses a gas spectrometer to find out exactly how much is in there. It's a calculation that they do. So if you'd like, I'd be more than happy to try to find out more details on that and get back to you. But my understanding is that there are 12 labs in Texas that do have the proper equipment for it. Now, we can have a whole nother conversation about the overly burdensome nature of having to test everything, and therefore, should we still even continue to be charging for this? But to answer your question, there is a way to determine that.
Okay, so that was honestly my only concern on this one, was if we could effectuate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions for this witness? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Chair next calls Jonathan Copeland for the bill with Cannabis Reform of Houston. Please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan Copeland. I am representing myself and Cannabis Reform of Houston. I've been short with all of my previous testimonies, but I want to go back over my own personal affidavit in more detail. So everybody knows, these affidavits are notarized. So when I'm speaking on behalf of somebody else, this is not hearsay like some other testimonies that I have heard from here. However, in October 2016, I suffered traumatic injury to both of my ears caused by a turbulent commercial passenger flight. This injury is also known as barotrauma. This injury caused one of my eardrums to rupture, creating an infection. I first noticed the issue when I had an overwhelming ringing noise in my ears causing unbearable pain, and this is the sound that I live with to this day. So, with that being said, the thing that really helps me are concentrates. I've discovered that if I consume a small amount of concentrates right before bed, it gets rid of my insomnia, and I don't have to consume the concentrates for maybe another 3 or 4 days, depending on how much stress I'm dealing with. When I don't have insomnia, I don't wake up with anxiety, I can function, I don't suffer from depression. This drug really helps me. Going on, I don't know if you have the affidavit in front of you, but I'll go ahead and continue reading from it. I couldn't get out of bed, and I couldn't walk immediately after the injury because it injured my vestibular organs, which are responsible for maintaining your balance. It took me at least a month to learn to walk without stumbling or falling or holding on to something, and over a year to be able to walk downstairs without the fear of falling. I had escalophobia, the fear of falling down escalators, for years. The doctors told me that the ringing in my ears would subside in a few months, but it never stopped. In April 2019, as a result of the injury, I was diagnosed with chronic tinnitus, which is triggered by hyperacusis, which is the sound sensitivity, like the clanging of the dishes, the squealing of brakes. I'm glad that we're not doing applause in here because you'd see me doing this every time. I have to wear ear protection all the time, and like I said before, the anxiety, the insomnia, and the depression, I thought I was bipolar. I thought I was crazy. I thought there was something wrong with me. Like I said, there are no FDA-approved treatments for tinnitus as of right now. There's not been enough research to where my doctors didn't know that this was going to last for the number of years that it has. So I am for the bill. I need these concentrates, as I've said in my previous testimony. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, are there questions for this witness? Thank you. Chair next calls LaTanya Whittington with Cannabis Reform of Houston for the bill.
Yes. Hello again, everyone.
Please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Yes, my name is LaTanya Whittington, and I represent Cannabis Reform of Houston, and also myself, LaTanya Whittington. And I won't be before you long on this
on
bill.
the bill, ma'am?
And I am for the bill HB 439.
Thank you.
I am definitely for the bill. Relating to the criminal penalties for possession or delivery of cannabis, all right? And I'm going to change that up to cannabis. Let's just stop there and say delivery of cannabis. Now, right now we're dealing with just getting the cannabis on our own instead of going to dispensaries and being diagnosed with the cannabis that we need. Okay. So these people are actually our doctors. They are. We go to the doctor and they give us all of these medicines and pills that we don't really want to take. But these are actually our doctors. And they're being locked up for it, you know. I know a lady that I met, and she was very, very, very sick. She was going to get her cannabis, but the dealer, I guess if that's what you want to call him, he was locked up. He went to prison. So she didn't have any connections for her cannabis. So she was very ill. She was sick, you know. So these are our doctors, and these are the people that y'all are locking up, you know. And that needs to stop. Cannabis concentrates. Some people do not smoke cannabis. Some people cannot smoke cannabis, okay? So they would use it in brownies, or they'll do edible cookies or edible candies. That's the way that they can consume their medicine. And that is a felony, as opposed to the flower guy that's in jail. You know, he could get out in a couple of months when you got your felony concentrate where they're looking at years. This is so backwards. There needs to be a change. That's basically what I want to say, that these are our doctors, and we need our doctors, and we need our medicine.
Thank you, Ms. Whittington. Members, are there questions for this witness? Thank you for your testimony. Chair next calls Karen Reeves with Centex Community Outreach, neutral on the bill. Please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
My name is Karen Reeves. I represent myself in the Syntax Community Outreach. I support reducing the penalties for concentrates, especially now that I've had the opportunity to try concentrates myself, which for the first time just recently, and it has helped me a whole lot. But what I've also learned is that cancer patients benefit.
I have you listed as neutral on the bill. Is that your?
I meant to say I was for the bill.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So would you like us to change?
Yes, please.
To for the bill?
Yes.
We will do that.
And the reason I am for this bill is because reducing penalties for the concentrates would help a lot of patients that use it that have terminal illnesses. Concentrates help terminal illness a lot better than flour. A lot of people are so sick that they can't inhale flour, so they put it in their foods in different types of ways. For me, I've tried flour using a concentrate in coconut oil, so I would put a little tablespoon in my coffee, and I guess that would be considered, you're changing the flour into to medicine, and it's weird to think that it's a felony. It's hard for me to grasp that concept sometimes when you try to tell people what can you do that's really going to help cancer, and you say a concentrate, a fully extracted cannabis oil, FECO, it's the best thing for cancer right now that we know of, and people are too scared to even try it because they're like, I don't want to go to jail. I'd rather die first, and that shouldn't be on the table. People should not have to choose whether they want to live or die because they're too afraid to try something that's really going to help. Flour helps a lot of illnesses and conditions, but concentrates, we know, proven fact from so many people coming back and saying, hey, I don't have cancer anymore. And I'm lucky I do have chronic illnesses, but I don't have cancer. But God forbid if I ever got cancer, I sure want to try concentrates, and I don't want to be put in jail for that. So I appreciate you guys hearing our testimonies.
Thank you. Members, are there questions for this witness? Thank you for your testimony. Chair next calls Jason Walker, testifying for the bill. Please
Yes.
state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
My name is Jason Walker. I represent myself, and I'm for the bill. Jason Walker, I use cannabis daily as medicine. I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2015, and I have replaced 10 pharmaceutical prescriptions with cannabis. I served in the Army for 20 years. I'm a disabled combat vet. I'm a Bronze Star recipient. I've been to combat deployments in both Iraq and Afghanistan. I use about an ounce of cannabis flower a month, maybe sometimes 2, depending on the quality cannabis. I know you've heard people say that that was a big sandwich bag and things like that. Maybe it was fluffy, but it wasn't that dense. But sometimes I have to use concentrates. I don't believe I'm a criminal for having to use concentrates. I was suicidal while I was taking all those medications, and at one time I did attempt to take my life, and cannabis has saved me from that. All right, this bill is important because the chronic pain and PTSD, if it gets added to teacup this session, people are still going to need to buy cannabis to treat themselves because the teacup will not lift the THC cap. I use the concentrates for my PTSD and my pain. I was prescribed benzodiazepines whenever I was in the Army to treat my PTSD, all right? They're usually fast-acting after you take them. And this is how the concentrates work for me, all right? And what some people call a dab or wax or something like that, I replaced my benzodiazepine with that. It's that fast-acting. And what the teacup is trying to offer us is not fast-acting. So you have to take it, and then you have to wait. It's like in a lozenge, nasal spray, some gummies, or a bunch of oil that has a bunch of byproduct and only has 0.5% medicine in it. And these dabs, they can be anywhere between 30 and 75% THC. Now that might sound a lot to some people, but whenever I'm having an anxiety attack because I just went through I live near Fort Hood, and they always have something going on like EOD or field artillery. So sometimes I can get flashbacks and be brought back into combat. And the benzos were what would bring me out of that. But the benzos were killing me, all right? All those medications were killing me. It led me to death, and it's doing it to all kinds of vets. And there's like 2 million vets that live in Texas. We've sacrificed so much. 20 years in the military, from 97 to 2017, during the fiercest battle that this generation has ever seen. We can go to war and kill, but whenever we come back, we got to sacrifice our freedom because what we believe in is healing us. And I believe that's wrong. You got any questions?
Thank you for your service, Mr. Walker. Members, are there any questions for this witness? Thank you. Chair next calls Robert Marks for the bill. Robert Marks here. Chair next calls Aldo Caldo. Again. Against the bill. Chair next calls Tony Lamar for the bill. Chair calls Renee Pettis for the bill. Okay.
Show registering, not just.
Show. Okay, everyone that I'm calling who's not testifying will be registered as do not testify. Chair calls Elizabeth Miller for the bill.
Thanks, everyone. Elizabeth Miller. I'm a representative Libertarian Party of Texas for SD 10, and I'm also speaking for myself in favor of the bill. I got to explain earlier why I need THC and concentrates, but I just wanted to point out to you guys that I have other people who have expressed desires to speak to this, who also are patients in my position, but they don't have the luxury of speaking on the record. So I'm trying to collect some of those, and I may send them to you guys with all I will have is my representation of telling you this is somebody who's one of your constituents. But I will do that in some cases. I will do that in some cases so that you can see there are people who don't have the luxury of saying I commit a daily felony in order to live. Some of them are veterans. So I hope that will be helpful to you. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I can get opioids if I want them. If I have enough money, about $600-700, I can go to the pain doctor and I will have opioids. Not only I can't have them because I use cannabis, I choose cannabis in lieu of opioids and in lieu of benzos. And if you go look at the overdoses, they involve alcohol, benzos, and opioids. Nobody has ever died from a cannabis overdose. It is not possible. So please remember that when you're looking at the penalties. We make it harder for people to do the thing that will keep them alive. Please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, members. Are there questions for this witness?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I don't see any questions. Thank you, ma'am, for your testimony. Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 439? The chair, yes.
I did register.
Okay, can you get with the clerk here, please? What? Okay.
Sean Silva. Right here?
Silva, Sean Silva.
Salvaje.
Silva. She said she read.
Salvaje.
I see it.
I'm registered for 439, 41, 441, and 1609.
Yes, yes, ma'am, we see you're registered, but we don't have you registered to testify, so we'll need to fix that.
Oh, that is strange.
But we'll go ahead and take your testimony. Please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Sean Salvaje. I am representing myself. Please bear with me. This is my first time. So, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I am a 100% disabled vet. I am going to calm myself down because anxiety, right? PTSD. It's a real thing.
Ma'am, can you please state your
yes, I
position
am
on the
for
bill?
this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that question has helped me to reset. Okay, so I served my country from 2007 to 2018. I was a trailblazer, a fast burner. I made Master Sergeant in about 10 years. So I have not one blemish on my service record. However, if I were to cook cannabis, even just the raw leaves, which are almost like a superfood, they have vitamins and nutrients for us, they're non-psychoactive, I could face felony charges. And the reason I would do that is because I have an autoimmune disease that was caused most likely by my experience overseas in combat. I have chronic migraines, chronic pain, PTSD, and you know, the list kind of goes on when you go over there because you just start finding more things keep popping up. And the reason that I wanted to speak on behalf, in favor of this bill is because the oils and concentrates specifically, especially for people like me, I'm a mother. So smokable cannabis and smokable hemp is something that I do use and it does help instantly. But edibles and concentrates are something that are a little bit more accessible when I'm with my children especially, and also when in a professional environment. Maybe we want to be mindful of the smell when we're dealing with other people who aren't consumers. For many veterans, the concentrates are essential for effective treatment. Some of the concentrates, like I said, lack a smell, but they're also really easy to package, and they're so small. The one thing that really concerns me is exactly, you know, I appreciate Mr. Bass' demonstration here because you saw just how little goes into food and how big the consequences. For me, as a veteran with absolutely no blemish on my service record, to have a concentrate, I would have felony charges. And I've actually narrowly escaped felony charges for flour already. So that's risky. But I understand that my time is coming up, and thank you for giving me this first round. I'll be better on the second one.
You did great, ma'am.
I had this all kind of prepared and didn't think we'd go in this order, but I'm learning. Ultimately, I just want you to understand that there are veterans out there who really need your help. Aside from that, there is an opportunity for Texas to lead the way for the southern states and mobilize our economy. We just suffered that crazy snowstorm and we realize that our infrastructure is lacking. We can make money off of this instead of penalizing people and costing ourselves more money and people in the active workforce, including myself. So I really thank you for your time and consideration and encourage you strongly to vote in favor of moving this bill forward and hearing it on the Senate floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, are there questions for this witness? And thank you for your service, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 439? Chair sees none. Chair recognizes Chair Collier to close.
On behalf of Representative Canales, I ask for your favorable consideration and I close.
Thank you. If there is no objection, House Bill 439 will be left pending at this time.
The chair lays out House Bill 99 and recognizes its author, Representative Toth, to explain the bill. And Representative Toth, do you have the committee substitute?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Hinojosa offers committee substitute, and Representative Toth is recognized to explain.
As it was said earlier, you guys are doing the Lord's work here tonight, and you're affecting a lot of lives and the big decisions that you're making. And my freshman year, I served on Crim Jur and Corrections, and Crim Jur is all about policy, and Corrections is about the outcome of that policy, right? And it was really helpful for me to be able to see both ends of it. And I think that the whole issue of marijuana B2C and what we do with marijuana, it puts a spotlight on the fact that it's probably one of the most egregious issues that we've got in the state of Texas. And it puts a spotlight on one of the greatest injustices in the state of Texas. Some statistics for you, Representative Crockett. 62,624 people in 2019 were incarcerated for marijuana possession in the state of Texas. And while there's not a racial disparity in the use of pot, marijuana, there's a racial disparity in who we lock up, clearly. And I'll give you just some quick statistics on it. 40+% of the people that we lock up in the state of Texas are African American. 3+ times the statistic in our population. And it really does highlight a real problem that we've got to address. And I'm thankful that Governor Abbott has endorsed the idea of reducing criminal penalty for up to 2 ounces of marijuana from a B to a C misdemeanor, which is exactly what this bill does. First, this bill would keep kids who did something stupid from getting a Class B misdemeanor on their record. Class C misdemeanors are generally not reported for background checks for purposes of employment. And as an employer, I've seen how damaging our current laws are for kids that have made bad choices that need a second chance. Our law enforcement officers do an incredibly great job, and this bill relieves them from spending time and resources on jailing low-level first-time drug users. Instead, they can be out with their focus on preventing more dangerous crimes. As stated, there is a committee substitute for this bill, and if you have any questions, I'm trying to be really brief because I know you guys are tired. I'm tired. My contacts are all dried out. They're about ready to fall out along with my eyes. So if you have any questions, we have a few witnesses.
Members, any questions? Okay, you will reserve your right to close. And
Yes,
call
ma'am.
back up.
Thank you.
The chair calls Jesse Williams. Mr. Williams, if you could state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
My name is Jesse Williams. I am representing myself today, and my position is I am for House Bill 99. Let's start off saying, as you said, we have a grave issue in our hands right now in the state of Texas with how we handle low-level cannabis possession. We've watched an individual who was possibly having a mental health crisis this last month die in state custody, all because a marijuana joint was right next to them as officers apprehended the individual. I'll be willing to even take the angle if we want to have a debate at any time from somebody on a prohibitionist side that says this is a dangerous and addictive substance. The way we're handling it now, incarceration is not the way we fix that. Medical professionals is the way we fix that. We divert to them. The prison system should not be our healthcare system for this issue if we're going to claim that that's an addictive and dangerous substance in this state. As a veteran, and I work with other veterans at the VA, there's a lot of veterans you saw tonight, David Bass, Jason, Sean. These individuals, they don't deserve to have what Marvin Scott had happen to him. No civilian, no citizen deserves that at any point. When we talk about the record, that record ruins lives. I served in the Navy. Had I made the mistake the Representative Toth talked about, I wouldn't be able to join. I wouldn't be able to go on and be a nuclear operator and run a power plant. I'd be denied that opportunity. I'd be losing scholarships, I'd be losing opportunities, all for a simple mistake made with a possible association mistake I could have made with somebody at a young age. I think that's egregious that we would treat our youth, we would treat veterans, any civilian that way, that we would deny them these opportunities later for a simple mistake. We also, as veterans, run a risk that the VA has said, hey, if we find this with you, then, well, we won't take away your benefits. But when a veteran goes forward to get an increase of benefits, say they have a mental issue that's taking place, and they want to use a court record to say, hey, this mental impairment's affecting my life. Well, the VA will see this record and see, well, you have cannabis there. You have this Class B, and we consider that abuse. The state is literally to them labels you as an abuser. And they can deny you an increase saying, you have a substance abuse problem. It's not a PTSD issue you have, substance abuse. So we still run this risk as veterans if we have this take place. My final thought is all great bills that are a step forward we're hearing tonight with this and into the morning is that we must recognize it's not just writing a great bill that gets things done in politics. I believe that Representative Toth's bill will be the likely bill that can overcome the steps and hurdles we faced last session, and not just because of its content, but also who the bill's coming from. This committee and the authors working together can work to be greater than the sum of its parts and finally get this into the Senate and get this heard over there and taken care of. I thank you for your time this morning.
Mr. Williams, you came up here all bright-eyed. I can tell you're a military man because you stay ready. I see this. Thank you so much for your service. Members, are there any questions? Thank you. Yes. Appreciate your service.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Yes. The chair calls Karen Reeves.
Hello, my name is Karen Reeves. Thank you for hearing my testimony. I've given this testimony 3 previous sessions, and I did give you guys a copy of that. I had to stay for the end of this to give this testimony one more time. I've probably read over the testimony hundreds of times, and every time it breaks my heart. I want to tell you briefly about my 2 sons. My youngest son wanted to be a Marine reservist, just like his older brother, who served 6 years and earned the title corporal. They both spent 4 years in the junior ROTC in high school, so this is something they both worked very hard for, and they were both very dedicated to serving our country. My youngest son came home for a holiday after a year of training. He had earned his title as Lance Corporal Marine Reservist. He was at the top of his class. However, during what was supposed to be a simple, brief visit home with family before returning to continue his training, my son made an error in judgment. He took a ride from an old friend from high school, and within a few miles from our house, they were pulled over on traffic violations, and their car was searched after the officer claimed to smell marijuana in the vehicle. My son was unaware at the time what was hidden in the trunk. My son was arrested and charged the same as the driver and the owner of that car. They were both charged with a felony. My son was innocent and in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, the facts of his case don't matter. It's the fact that the laws are unjust. No one belongs in jail for a plant. This unjust arrest happened to my son back in the beginning of 2014. He lost his title as Marine. Immediately after his arrest, he was not even drug tested. They made that decision, and they bullied him, and he was shamed by his superiors. My son is not a criminal. He was willing to die for his country, yet he was victimized by unjust laws. But with persistence and determination by his lawyer, my son's charges were lowered to Class B misdemeanor. But he had to plead guilty. He did serve 2 years probation, community service, and a $2,000 fine. This has been over 7 years ago, and every time I have to think about this story, I'm saddened for my son. My son will never be the same. This affected our family in more ways than I can express. So I urge y'all to push this bill or any of these bills and give it serious consideration. It's hard for people like myself to come and advocate for our family. And like I said before, my son was a face of over 60,000, so my heart breaks for every single family. And right now my heart is beating so fast because I have to stay here and advocate for those that can't be here to advocate for themselves. And I appreciate every one of you guys for staying here and showing us in Texas that our stories are important. And you being here right now, that makes me have just a tiny bit of hope, and I appreciate that.
And so can you just state your name?
Karen Reeves with the Syntax Community Outreach, and I believe I supported this bill. Does it say neutral? If you could.
It says on the bill.
Huh?
How would you like to be registered on that?
Did I say supported or for it or neutral? I can't remember. That was like.
You are neutral on the bill.
Okay, so I would like to change that to support.
To support.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
That's no problem. We got it.
It was like I had the paper with all of them listed, and I was going to go eeny, meeny, money, mo, and just see which one, is that how we're going to have to choose? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
No, you can support it. We'll change you down for supporting.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. The chair calls Ronnie Morris. That's Assistant Police Chief Ronnie Morris.
Good morning. My name is Ronnie Morris. I'm an Assistant Chief of Police with the Grand Prairie, Texas Police Department. I'm here on behalf of the Texas Police Chiefs Association and the Grand Prairie Police Department to speak in opposition of House Bill 99.
Assistant Chief Morris, I don't have you down for the association. Would you like for us to add that on? I just have you
If
down
you
here
could,
for-
please.
Okay, what is the name of the association?
Texas Police Chiefs Association.
Yes, sir. We'll make that notation. And what is your position on the bill?
I'm speaking in opposition of the bill today.
Yes, sir. Please.
So this bill, like several others being heard by this committee today, seeks to reduce the penalties for possession of marijuana and or essentially decriminalize certain small amounts of marijuana altogether by making it a fine only. Reforming the penalty scale for small amounts of marijuana may very well be the most reasonable and responsible course of action for our state right now. But to achieve responsible reform, you must be responsible in defining what small amounts of marijuana are and not be irresponsible by completely decriminalizing small amounts by making them a fine only. As public servants, our collective responsibility is to improve the quality of life in our law-abiding citizens, for our law-abiding citizens in our communities and make them safer, not to improve the quality of life of the criminal dealers in the communities that make our citizens' lives, quality of life lower and less safe. Again, I'm not opposed to reform, and I'm not speaking about compassionate use or even medical use. I'm talking about the criminal use of marijuana. But this bill, as written, is irresponsible. Some visual items I have here with me I think will reflect that pretty well, and I'll touch on that momentarily. Though no police departments or police officers are perfect, there are numerous police agencies in this state, including Grand Prairie Police Department, that are model agencies when it comes to equity and fairness in enforcing laws in a manner that is seen as legitimate and procedurally just by our communities. If you could look at the policy that I just had given to each one of you, you'll see what our processes are on minor misdemeanor and even Class C arrests. So instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I urge this body to partner directly with organizations like Texas Police Chiefs Association, Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, and police chiefs around the state to enact statewide best practice policies like Grand Prairie Police Department's policies for all agencies whose policies don't necessarily reflect the most responsible approach. And we can make that a law in and of itself without throwing everything else that is good about our current laws out. And without partnering with police executives in the state to enact these changes, reaching responsible reform is most likely completely out of reach. So what I have right here, this is the third legislative session that I've come and testified on bills similar to this. And there's always a conversation on what is a small amount of marijuana. And a lot of people, you would be led to believe through a lot of conversations that are had that we're talking a joint. You know, someone discussed something earlier about, 0.4 grams in a brownie recipe and things like that. I would agree those are probably pretty small amounts. But what this bill seeks to identify as a small amount is this. This right here is 2 ounces. Now this, in all transparency, this is not marijuana. This is, actually it's parsley, but it very closely reflects in scale and appearance as marijuana, but this is 2 ounces. So I don't think that, I'll leave it to you all to decide whether or not you think that this is a small amount of marijuana or not. I do not, and I believe that most people do not either. And this bill, if it were to become a law, you'd have to have an amount equal to this. This is 4 ounces before a police officer would even have the option of making an arrest in a situation when they come into contact with somebody who's in possession of this amount of marijuana. So I hope that this demonstration helps to show actually what a small amount of marijuana is being defined as.
Well, thank you so much. Members, are there any questions? Representative Crockett.
I did not want to have to ask questions, but I've got questions. You said you're in Grand Prairie.
Yes.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Grand Prairie covers Dallas County, Tarrant County, and Ellis County.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I am from Dallas, and my DA has had a lot of talks about how much money Dallas County has saved because my DA is not prosecuting these, what I will call misdemeanor. I won't call them small amounts.
Sure.
Misdemeanor.
Mm-hmm.
And you understand that DA Cruzeau has declined to prosecute these misdemeanor marijuana cases, correct?
To a degree, he's declined first-time offender marijuana cases.
Okay. Let me give you some other information. He also informed me that in evaluating who was being arrested in Dallas County for Class A and Class B misdemeanors, I believe the number was approximately 90% of those people were actually black and brown. And of course, Dallas County doesn't just cover Grand Prairie, but you've heard testimony over and over and over about the fact that we're seeing a disproportionate number. And I'm just trying to be clear. You're not contending that there's not a disproportionate number of black and brown people that are being arrested for simple, I'm going to call it simple possession, because that's what we call it sometimes.
Well, I can't speak for the entire county of Dallas County. I work in Grand Prairie, which is partially in Dallas County. And Grand Prairie is also a majority minority city. So, you know, the bulk of the contacts that we have within our city are minority.
Okay, so in your experience, it's still going to be minorities,
Yes.
even if that's just kind of the general makeup. We've heard a lot about the defund the police movement, and there's been a lot of talk about law enforcement saying, hey, no, we need more resources. Don't take resources away from us. You'd agree with me, generally speaking, about that point, correct?
Yes.
With that being said, can you explain to the members on the committee approximately how long does it take to actually effectuate an arrest for a simple, and when I'm saying simple, I'm referring to misdemeanor marijuana cases. How long does that take? Is it 5 minutes? I see that, Rep. Kaysen has some marijuana. I smell it or whatever. 5 minutes later, he's in jail. How long? You got that loud. How long does it take on average? And obviously, it's gonna vary. But give me your number.
If you could just elaborate a little further, you're talking about from the point of arrest through prosecution, or how long it takes an officer to
not
actually...
prosecution, just to effectuate the arrest, because you need to do a report. We've talked a lot about bail and the information that a magistrate gets. So if you're doing an on-site arrest, that means you didn't have a warrant, so you're going to need to write up an affidavit so that magistrate knows exactly what went on, so that magistrate can determine what it is that they're going to assess. So there's a report that has to be done, so that's resources and time. You actually have to, I'm assuming you're going to frisk him and do some kind of Terry frisk. Make sure he's good, no weapons, things like that. You're going to handcuff him. You're going to transport him. And because this is an offense that is punishable by jail time, because we're talking about Class Bs and Class As, 9 times out of 10, you're going to county. You're going to take him to Lou Sterrett if it's Dallas, right? So you're going to drive from Grand Prairie to Dallas County Jail, which is downtown Dallas, which is, 25 minutes?
We don't transport.
Okay, so where you put...
Dallas County comes and picks up from our jail.
Okay, all right. So Dallas County helps you out on that, but that's resources. So that means that we're sending somebody out to come get Rep. Kaysen and then take him back. but can you give me an idea of the entire bookend process? Because like it's not quick. And if you pull him over in his car, which is where we get a lot of these possession of marijuana cases, you pull somebody over, you say you smell marijuana, that's enough for probable cause. You then effectuate a search, you find a blunt or whatever. Then we got to impound the car. Like for law enforcement to argue that they do not have the resources that they need to effectuate their jobs, it is so hard for me to understand why we would not want to make sure that I want you going after the murderers. We got plenty of them. I want you going after any trafficker, any child sex. I want you going after I don't care if he's smoking weed, to be perfectly honest. If it means that I'm going to free up resources for you. So I want the committee to understand, I understand how much goes into effectuating an arrest, but if you could give them just a general idea, because they don't necessarily know how much time we're truly wasting and resources we're wasting as we're trying to figure out how we're going to make sure you guys have what you need to keep us all safe.
Okay, first of all, I would challenge your premise of saying that it's wasting time. It's what the community members in our city tell us that is important to them and they would like to continue. But depending on the type of contact that we have, we're talking anywhere from 30 minutes to outer limits of about an hour of overall time for an officer to do that. But something else I would also direct your attention to is the policy that I passed out to you. You'll notice on the first page under Class C arrests, which is generally what the majority of our arrests for misdemeanor marijuana would fall under, because we generally go under the paraphernalia charge as opposed to the actual charge of possession of marijuana. There's several steps that
I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm gonna have to interrupt you. So you're saying that your current policy right now is to essentially do what he's trying to do in this bill?
Now, if you could read the front page of the policy, you'll see that arrest is not our default for someone who has possession of marijuana.
Okay.
There's other things. Again, there's spirit of the law that we have to take into account. There's overall law enforcement objectives that we have to take into account. And very rarely in our case, in our city, does that account for an arrest.
I just want to clarify really quickly. You're saying that in many areas are doing this because of the unintended consequences of the legalization of hemp for some people. What they're doing is they're actually just dropping things down to Class C paraphernalia. So my question is, essentially, and the bill author can correct me if I'm wrong, but he's trying to take possession under 2 ounces, which is normally a B, and then classify it as a Class C. And if I understand your testimony correctly, right now, for the most part in practice, you guys are arresting people for possession of marijuana, but you're actually just charging them for the Class C paraphernalia on these cases anyway. So I guess I'm trying to understand the objection, because this would be essentially doing what you're already doing.
Well, it's actually not the same, because it doesn't take into account, actually the bill as it's written now would take away our discretion to be able to make that decision. Plus it also wouldn't allow us to take into consideration prior history of a person that we're in contact with. Obviously that changes the dynamics. If we are in contact with a person who has, half a dozen previous convictions for possession of marijuana, chances are we're not going to go with the possession of drug paraphernalia citation charge.
Okay. Thank you.
Members, are there any other questions? Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
The chair calls Emily Garrick. Let the record reflect that she is registered neutral and not testifying. The chair calls Cindy Castilla. And Ms. Castilla, if you could state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill, please.
All right, let me pass these on. All right,
I'm going to act like it's still evening and say good evening, Madam Chair and committee, because that feels better. I'm Cindy Castilla. I am against this bill. I just had picked one bill to testify on. We're against, I'm with Texas Eagle Forum, I'm sorry. I'm president of it, and I'm also testifying for myself. We're against any of these moves to not just stay where we are and hold the line on this. There are consequences to decisions, and the decision to make less consequences or easier consequences for doing something that for some people it might be safe and easy. For other people, it's not disputed anymore that using marijuana can cause you mental health issues, psychotic episodes, manic depressive disease disorder, and schizophrenia. I have a nephew who struggles with all of that now because of a pot episode. It's real, and it changes their life. It is not liberty. It is not a great way to live. It causes you medicine for the rest of your life. You know, there are a lot of issues with that. I was doing a study on housing in America and the problems about, around housing and homelessness. And I started looking at the map, and I've studied marijuana for a long time. And I'm looking at the map of where it's decriminalized, legalized, medical use. And I thought, this, I think, matches. I overlay where homelessness is increasing and growing, and it's pretty much a match. You guys are trying to solve problems, and our city governments and county governments are trying to solve problems, but there are problems created by some of these decisions that you want to make things a little easier on somebody or to not have consequences. But just because there aren't consequences, it doesn't make it still the best choice. And so children will use more younger people use where pot is legalized. I could not get this on my computer. I'm sorry, I tried to send it. Green and red are legalized or medical marijuana. The top numbers are kids 12 to 17, 18 to 25, and adults over 25, and it's percentages. Texas is way down here. Do we want to vote for our kids to move up here? We don't want to. Okay, in 2018, there were 211 deaths of little children through neglect or abuse. 85 of the deaths, the perpetrator or the parent in charge, whoever was in charge, was using pot. That's a big percent. There was no other substance that was used more than there. 108 had been former users. That's just big. In Colorado, 54.4% of high school children who smoke pot say they have driven right after smoking pot. That is not a good number. We don't want those kind of consequences for our state. We don't want that. And the states that have done this, they're not necessarily making things better for their state. You might make it better for a couple of kids, but a couple of kids, a lot of times it's your decision that got you where you are. And you can sometimes make a better decision. And I think for our whole state, we make a better decision by keeping this tighter and looking at data and look what happens in places where it's legalized. Thank you for your time.
Members, are there any questions for the witness? Thank you so much for staying.
Thank you.
The chair calls John Buckham. If you could state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. My name is John Balcom. I'm the political director for Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition. I'm also the chairman emeritus for the Texas Young Republican Federation, and I'm speaking in favor of HB 99. First, I want to thank Representative Toth for filing this legislation, as well as the committee for hearing it well into the morning here. Our current policy is a costly one, both in human cost and financial cost, as the representative outlined in his opening statement. I want to especially thank him for including the deferred adjudication in the committee substitute, which will allow individuals an opportunity to have no criminal record because a Class C is still a criminal conviction. Law enforcement offers across Texas, despite what you may have heard tonight, realize that personal use marijuana possession is a low priority and therefore several counties across the state have implemented policies such as diversion programs. Where I live in Harris County, it was actually started by a Republican district attorney. It was a wild success. Our current district attorney has expanded that program, and from all accounts that I've heard from law enforcement and everyone else, it has been a resounding success and has been modeled in other areas like Dallas County and other places around the state as well. My great friend and the Republican founder of Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition, Ann Lee, couldn't be here tonight, but I did want to honor her with one of her quotes. As Republicans, we always support law and order, but we have to draw a distinction at bad law. Supporting bad law does not give you law and order, it gives you law and disorder. We are spending money on this every year. The use of cannabis has not gone down, and we continue to ruin people's lives and stigmatize them with the criminal conviction that follows them for the rest of their lives. It's time that we stop paying homage to this bad law, end quote. In my opinion, Republicans betray their small government principles by not supporting penalty reduction from small amounts of cannabis. Support for cannabis penalty reduction is widespread, bipartisan, and growing rapidly both in Texas and across the country. State governments are coming to terms with the facts that the traditional excessive penalties were not warranted and have caused more harm than they sought to prevent. Some opponents will say that these have damaging consequences, but if you look on the National Institute of Drug Abuse website, you'll actually see that according to their research, youth marijuana use has remained steady even as states have made changes to their marijuana laws to make them less restrictive. In fact, according to other federal and state data, adolescent marijuana use has actually declined in some of the states that have legalized cannabis, which really goes to the point that with statistics, you can find a study that pretty much presents your bias. What I'll say is, our current policy of prohibition is an absolute failure. I think to the point why the representative has chosen 2 ounces is because that's what's in our existing statute. It's the easiest just to bring that down. Last session, we had a bill that had 1 ounce that overwhelmingly passed the House. Unfortunately, a couple of members of this committee voted against it. I hope that you'd reconsider. I would love to visit with you all about it. As fellow Republicans, I support a lot of the work that you do. And I think, unfortunately, in my opinion, you're on the wrong side of that vote. We'd love to understand your objections and hopefully bring you, in support of this bill that is not moving us towards legalization. It's not taking a tool out of law enforcement's tool belt. I can't even count how many times I heard that this evening. We don't want to take tools away from law enforcement. This isn't advocating for children to use cannabis. This is for adults who are in possession of small amounts of cannabis to have an opportunity to not have a very stigmatizing and damaging criminal record. So with that, I would urge you to vote this bill out of committee and encourage you to get it to the floor and pass it again. And really with all these marijuana bills, get them over to the Senate and encourage some action there as well.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Representative Johnson?
There's something that frustrates me, and I know it's 4:30 in the morning, but I'm still going to say, you say Harris County's been a resounding success on marijuana. I do indigent defense work. I still see marijuana cases. I also see something really frustrating is that when the DA says, I'm not going to prosecute it, and people smoke it in their homes, and then they get in their car and they're pulled over for defective taillight, and they reek of marijuana, they now have probable cause to go through the whole car. And I have no legal authority to say they were not smart for relying on the DA who said, I'm not going to prosecute it. So there's some still inconsistencies in not having it. And when you say, hold on, and when you say we're going to reduce the amount, my question is, where are you getting your supply? And what worries me is we're allowing people to use without having a legitimate avenue for people to get some substance that's regulated that you know what you're getting. And to me, it's frustrating that we're not taking an approach to try to address both issues.
There's a little bit to unpack there. So I'll say, firstly, having a relationship with District Attorney Devin Anderson and now Kim Ogg, I understand that there are some people, you can't make people make wise decisions. So some people that have been offered this deferment in this program have chosen not to do so. And then they're going to suffer the consequences of having to go to court for that conviction.
No, I'm not
specifically,
saying that.
But also to your point about.
No, wait.
Okay.
Charging decisions are not defendants. That's prosecutor decisions. So when people are charged with marijuana, I'm just letting you know the policy is not consistent.
It's not implemented consistently.
Correct.
Okay. To your point about driving under the influence, driving under the influence of cannabis is already illegal. We have drug recognition experts who.
I didn't say anything about driving under the influence.
You said that people would smoke pot in their home and then get in their car and drive.
Smoke pot at home and it reeks because it's a unique odor that every law enforcement officer gets. When they get pulled over for defective taillight, it is now reasonable suspicion of a crime that the officer can search the vehicle. And as their defense attorney, I have no legal authority to say you had an improper search and seizure because the DA promised everybody they could smoke weed and you wouldn't prosecute it. So you're using the smell of marijuana to bootstrap a search of your private vehicle. So I'm with you.
And does
I'm
this
just
bill change
saying
that?
that's the inconsistency in telling some people one thing and doing another. And my concern is, again, when we say we don't care if it's a Class C for personal use, we're not addressing the fact of how that gets done for other areas of law enforcement or probable cause, and we're not addressing where you get the substance and what you're buying.
Right. Well, I think right now, unfortunately, we have a disproportionate enforcement in the state because some counties are choosing to do things differently. That was a big thing with law enforcement. If they smell marijuana, what does an ounce or 2 ounces or 3 ounces or 4 ounces of marijuana smell like? So they want to continue to have that ability to use that as probable cause to search the vehicle. Now, if somebody just smoked in their home, got in their car, and they reek of marijuana, but they don't have any in their possession, well, they're still committing an offense because now they're driving under the influence, potentially, of marijuana, and there are drug experts that could recognize those things and charge them accordingly. So we're not advocating for people to get in their cars and drive around with marijuana. The question of where are you getting it? Well, it's illegal. So, who knows where you're getting it? You're taking a risk to have it even in your possession whatsoever. But currently, if you are taking that risk, facing right now what is a Class B misdemeanor, I think all we're asking for is to simply move that down into a penalty range that doesn't carry a threat of jail time, that has included in the committee substitute deferred adjudication provision. So maybe I'm not completely understanding your question or your proposition to me, but I'd love to understand the situation in Harris County from a prosecutor's perspective. I know from the district attorney that, in her opinion, it is successful, but certainly there are some people who have not completed the program. And, like I said, you can't force people to make good decisions for themselves all the time.
Members, are there any other questions? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, wait, sorry. Vice Chair Bell.
Mr. Baccabat, I'm probably one of those individuals that you were referring to that are on the wrong side of this.
I didn't say wrong side, sir, just that you voted against it.
Right, and I'll own that because what you need to understand in my district, my police chiefs and my sheriffs do not want me to vote for this. Neither do the two parties of the two counties I represent. So though I appreciate the young Republicans and I appreciate what you're doing and advocating for, I also would ask you to appreciate the fact that I'm going to vote my district and what they look towards me to do here at this position I've been elected. So once again, I appreciate your position on that, and I just ask you to respect mine as well.
Yes, sir, and I would expect nothing less from everyone in this building to represent their constituents thoroughly. And if you look at Texas in its totality, an overwhelming majority support full legalization of cannabis. So if we were to bring that, I think we would see a resounding difference in opinion, amongst the entire state of Texas and all the representatives. But I can appreciate your position and that of your constituents. I would encourage you to ask law enforcement what are their issues specifically with this bill. This isn't a decriminalization. This isn't a legalization bill. It's simply taking a reasonable amount of cannabis down into a non-punishable by jail offense.
Right. Well, and thank you for being here tonight. I mean, we're all tired, and this was an important issue, and thanks for being here.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your consideration and everyone taking this seriously as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The chair calls LaTanya Whittington. Ms. Whittington, can you state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill, please?
Yes, that woke me up. My name is LaTanya Whittington, and I represent Cannabis Reform of Houston and myself, and I support House Bill 99. And decriminalization and legalization has to go together. And 63% of Texas want legalization of cannabis. So if you're following your constituents, you really need to do some more research and find out who exactly wants this thing and who don't. And you'll find out there's a different number. But let me go to my statement. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I worked for the Men's Warehouse for 25 years. I'm a Harris County Democratic Party Precinct Chair 320, election presiding judge. Okay, I do all of that. I am a very active person in my community. I'm also a steering committee on Our Revolution. Now, I say all this to say that I can function with cannabis. It helps me. I'm going to speak about my personal story, what happened to me. At 16, I was caught at school with a joint, smoking a joint. I was dealing with anxiety at that time, but didn't know until I really examined what I was going through at 15. So cannabis was medicine for me even then, as I look back. I was taken to the principal's office in handcuffs by 5 cops. Then I was walked down the hall handcuffed and was taken to jail in the car, you know. I was so embarrassed being 15 in school, but just trying to medicate myself. My mother, my dear mother, may she rest in peace. She got me out of jail. I was in there for a day, you know, because she knew that was wrong. You know, she felt for me. Now, that summer, I had issues getting a job. Okay. I couldn't get a summer job. And there's a lot of things that I couldn't do because of that one joint. That's not even an ounce. Now, if this law was implemented then in 1985 for me, then it would have been way better for me at that time. I wouldn't have suffered that summer. And it was really bad. I would have just got a ticket. You know, when you have this on your record, it's hard to get a job, to get an apartment. And please, you know, this should be a bipartisan bill. It should be something that Republicans and Democrats look at ourselves. Let's stop the private prisons, and mostly minority blacks are being locked up in jail for a plan. I will never stop fighting for my medicine from 15 to 50. That is my medicine, regardless. And I appreciate y'all staying here late and listening to my testimony.
Thank you, members. Are there any questions? Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Chair calls Jonathan Copeland. Mr. Copeland, can you state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill, please?
My name is Jonathan Copeland. I'm representing myself and Cannabis Reform of Houston. I just wanted to say thank you for sticking around this late. If you were a city council, there'd probably only be like 2 of you at this time. I can really see how this is the room of professionals here. Thank you. I would be a little more professional. I would, you know, not depend on reading a script like my speech professor taught me, but 24 hours ago, I left Montgomery County to come here, and we've been here like ever since. So I'm tired. I'm sure y'all are too. As a constituent of Representative Toth, I come here from his conservative district to say I am in favor of his bill. His motives behind writing the bill are empathetic towards moving the state of Texas in the direction that we need. The bill is long overdue. Parts of it passed long ago thanks to Representative Toth authoring, but my concern is if this bill does pass, it needs to be added to the Senate calendar without delay this time. We all know that Lieutenant Governor is far from bipartisan. If we let this bill get to his desk, there's likely a chance that it will go somewhere further than what most Democratic bills can go. He may even be more inclined to pass it if it were co-authored by a Democrat. Any questions? Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Copeland? Thank you so much. The chair calls Jason Vaughn.
Hello, Madam Chair. My name is Jason Vaughn. I am here representing myself and Texas Young Republicans, speaking in favor of this bill. This is the second priority bill that you guys happen to have tonight on behalf of Texas Young Republicans. And as the Speaker decided to say at our dinner 2 weeks ago, yes, sometimes Young Republicans like talking about cannabis because it's an important issue. And it's usually the issue that we come to your offices for, and it's like the one area that we may disagree on, right? And so we're not going to sit and focus on the areas we agree on. We're in politics. We're going to talk about the areas we disagree. In 1975, we actually have a historian and found a resolution from 1975. I believe all of you might have been considered young back then, or not born. Which called for the penalty reduction for marijuana. At that point, since 1975, would you like to guess how many laws have changed in Texas? None. By the way, it's 4 hours in Dallas County for an arrest, by the way. The problem isn't just the arrest. It's not just how much time it takes. It's not just the money. It's not all of those things. You lose, because of federal laws, you lose your license. You lose your right to own a gun. Now, you lose your right to get a grant. You know you can kill somebody in the state of Texas, and you can get a grant to go to college when you get released, but you cannot have a joint or a drug crime. You can't join the military service without a waiver, and you can't even volunteer in your child's school 20 years later. I highly encourage you to look up a website called the MomVict, where you can see how many people are affected by these sorts of things. Many years later in their life, they can't volunteer at their child's school because of a drug crime when they were 17 years old. Nobody today would sit here and say, you know what, we're going to pass that. The same body that just passed alcohol to go is not going to sit here and go, you know what, we're going to put you Class B misdemeanor. We're going to ruin your life forever for these things. I worked in a halfway house in college. I've seen the pain of drugs, but I've also seen the pain of government. I am a conservative. I believe in limited government. These laws are not limited government.
Thank you so much. Members, are there any questions? Thank you for staying. The chair calls Judge John Delaney. We're going to mark Judge Delaney for the bill. He's registered for the bill, but not testifying. The chair calls Austin Zamarini. And Mr. Zamhariri. I'm sorry. Will you please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill?
Thank you. My name's Austin Zamhariri. I'm representing myself, and I am in favor of HB 99. And I'd like to thank Rep. Toth for presenting the bill and for all of the members staying into the wee hours of the morning to talk about it. The reason I'm thankful for this bill was meant for a person like me. In 2010, I was arrested for possession of marijuana under 2 ounces. I spent 1 day in Grapevine Municipal and subsequently 5 days in Tarrant County Correctional for approximately 2 grams of flower marijuana. Understandably, in 2010, medical marijuana was still very novel to our country. There were several states that had medical marijuana that existed. But in Texas, still very much Class B misdemeanor, punishable in most counties. However, in 2021, we have now almost had a decade of legal marijuana in some states. And now, where we stand in 2021, if you take I-40 and Interstate 10 west, the moment you cross the Texas border, out of Texas, into New Mexico, through Arizona, through Nevada, into California, it is legal marijuana all the way, from the Texas border all the way to the coast. And so now, while we see Montana, New York, Massachusetts, Oregon, South Dakota, we see states left and right legalizing, full-blown legalizing adult use cannabis. We're coming back session after session. Many of us, some of us in this room have been here for 10 years, coming back, pleading with this committee, asking you to please hear us when we say that the times are changing in this country. And not just in this country, but this state as well, because Mexico is about to legalize marijuana. Oklahoma has a very robust medical marijuana program to the point that their lawmakers are working on a plan to allow Texans access into their program. And so it's not becoming a point of whether Texans can get access. There are estimates out there that the black market in Texas is between $4 and $5 billion annually. All right, access is not the problem. Now we have to begin to look at smart approaches to enforcement. And had Rep. Toth's bill had been available in 2010, it would have saved a casualty from the war on drugs like me. If it was instituted today, our friend, our neighbor, and our brother Marvin Scott, who died in the custody of Collin County Correctional because of the possession of one marijuana joint, may still be alive today.
Thank you so much. Is there any questions? Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
The chair calls Judge Michael Fields. Let the record reflect that he is registered against this bill and is not testifying. The chair calls Dr. Robert Marks. Let the record reflect that he is registered for the bill but is not testifying. The chair calls Judge John Delaney. Let the record reflect that he is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Zoe Russell. Ms. Russell, if you could state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill, please.
Sure thing. I'm Zoe Russell. I'm from San Antonio. I'm a criminal defense lawyer and speaking on behalf of myself, but also for Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition, or RAMP.
I'm sorry, I got to make sure I have a clear record. You are not listed on here for the Republicans that have to have a whatever. What is it?
Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition, kind of like a double negative there.
Okay, you want us to add that to
Sure.
your?
Yeah.
Can you say it one more time so she can type it in?
Do you want me to write it down?
No, you could just say it.
Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition.
Okay. All right. And what is your position on the bill?
I'm for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we heard about Marvin Scott a little bit. Marvin Scott III, he passed away in Collin County custody for possession of marijuana. 7 correctional officers have already been fired related to that incident, and that was just very, very unnecessary. I feel it's similar to Sandra Bland level of unnecessary arrests. There is no reason that we're using our limited resources of jail beds, police hours, jury trials at this point, very limited resources of jury trials, prosecutors, judges, for people that we're not really afraid of, people that we don't think are a threat to public safety. We heard so much during the bail reform discussion of people that we're really scared of, people that we want to keep locked up. And I'm sure none of us were thinking of somebody that got popped for less than 2 ounces of marijuana in that discussion. And so if we're not wanting to keep them in pretrial detention, why are we enforcing a 6-month potential jail sentence on them after the fact if that is proven? I wanted to address kind of the state of the law after HB 1325 passed in 2019. That was the hemp bill. After that bill passed, DA's offices, including TDCAA, said that we now need a lab report that shows down to this sensitivity level of 0.3% THC. And that's not an easy thing to just produce overnight. So DPS has been working round the clock since that time to produce this method, this procedure to test the green leafy substance. They haven't even touched the concentrates yet. We don't have a test procedure for that. We only have the green leafy substance to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it's marijuana and not hemp. And they're only doing that in felony cases. And so now that has led to a lot of, and that only happened in August 2020, just so y'all know. So there's a huge backlog in felony cases, not even touching misdemeanors. And so now DAs have responded to that differently across the state. In large urban counties, a lot of DAs have said that they're not accepting cases, and I know that there's not perfect enforcement of that. In rural counties, a lot of DAs are going full steam ahead. They're prosecuting the cases. Some are sending them to private labs. Some maybe are setting up their own lab testing. All of that needs to be challenged by a competent attorney at trial, because there's no telling that they're actually doing this lab testing correctly. We haven't really tested that in trial yet, because large part because of COVID. And so what happens to people who get arrested in these small counties who are gung-ho about prosecuting? People like Mr. Scott, if they have limited funds, they might have an appointed attorney. That court might not appoint an expert for them to challenge that lab report. It leads to a lot of pleading guilty to something that maybe they should have never had to plead guilty to. And so we're putting a layer on top of a layer of this arbitrariness. So there's a disparity in which county you happen to be going through when you get pulled over. Then you've got a layer of the racial disparity in policing in the first place. Then you've got now, if you're a lower income Texan and you can't afford that attorney that might actually take the case, we don't all get indigent defense counsel like Representative Crockett and Representative Johnson. Some people are working in Bexar County for $180 for a plea. That's what we get paid in Bexar County for a misdemeanor. And so this is a huge failure of due process and just its arbitrary nature and how we're enforcing this law across the state. And it's just not fair statewide. And so I think we need to change this to a Class C so that we're not lumping this all on our most vulnerable Texans, the lower income, the minority groups. We need to do this across the board the same way, and just think of that bail consideration. Are we really afraid of these people, or are we just annoyed with them? And so I think if we're annoyed with them, a Class C can capture what we need to do with this.
Thank you so much. Members, are there any questions?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. Really
Thank you. Thank you so much. The chair calls Aldo Caldo. Let the record reflect that Aldo Caldo has registered against the bill but is not testifying. The chair calls Tony Lamar. Let the record reflect that Tony Lamar has registered, it just went away, I don't know what it was, for the bill but is not testifying. The chair calls Derek Cohen.
Not quite, sir. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Derek Cohen from the Texas Public Policy Foundation, testifying in support of HB 99. I do want to make it clear that we do not support, and I can speak for myself and my employer, that we do not support legalization. We do not support decriminalization in any way. But one thing we do support, or at least support looking at, is how we actually punish this within the confines of the criminal system, so long as we're keeping it within the criminal system. And so I think what we're seeing here, and this is something that I think the committee sub speaks directly to, is that we look at how deferred adjudications are happening, or how, the bill would have left the floor, I believe, during the 2019 session. And with this deferred adjudication, this is actually putting into law what we see a lot of prosecutors across the state doing by practice or ignoring entirely. And one of the points I make when some of these marijuana groups ask me to speak, and I get to be the skunk at the garden party in those particular events, is I say that you can agree with the process of a diversion. You can agree with what a diversion seeks to accomplish. The problem is all this is being done extra legally. This is essentially working itself out in the confines of prosecutorial discretion, which again, we can agree with the actual ends to that. But now this would actually provide for the means. It would actually codify the means for having that. And I think you see in other sections, specifically Section 2, where it makes it a citable offense, is that's where you actually have the issues where this, you see all these other legislation, around the building with names like George Floyd and Sandra Bland on it, that have to do with arrests for non-jailable offenses. This is just a scintilla of what you're seeing in those particular legislations, confined strictly to under this particular weight. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The chair calls Amelia Casas.
Good morning, members. My name is Amelia Casas. I am with the Texas Fair Defense Project and testifying on HB 99. I want to thank you so much, Representative Toth, for authoring this legislation. I think you're definitely getting the ball rolling in a direction we want to go. I do just want to reiterate our concerns about changing the offense to a Class C misdemeanor, specifically the fact that nobody is going to be provided a lawyer in these cases, and so most people will just get the ticket, simply pay it, without considering or realizing that they are pleading guilty to a criminal drug offense, which holds a whole set of federal collateral consequences, which they will hold against them for the rest of their life. So for these reasons, we definitely would urge you to please consider a civil penalty rather than a Class C criminal offense. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Any questions? Thank you so much. Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Johnson.
So now it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and this is a really hard way to have a really tough, comprehensive conversation around this issue. But you've talked about the fact Class C, and we just heard this gentleman say we want to keep it in Class C to keep it criminal, right? Class C is still a criminal offense.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're, again, enabling the behavior. I'm seeing inconsistencies in Harris County with if you have weed with a weapon or whatever else, we make different decisions. That's completely different if you drop into another county in Fort Bend, they're going to handle it differently. And we don't have any kind of a consistent, comprehensive approach other than to say, we'll just give you a Class C. But for a lot of people, a Class C still has a significant impact, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The chair calls Renee Perez. Let the record reflect that Mr. Perez is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Luis LaRota. Let the record reflect that Mr. LaRota is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Major David Bass. Let the record reflect that Major Bass has registered for the bill but not testifying. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 99? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Toth to close.
I'd like to thank all of you for your patience. I have very little hair left, and I was going to pull it out during this hearing. This is not a legalization bill. We are not becoming Colorado. To suggest that is ridiculous. Many states are doing this. And they're not doing it to legalize pot. They're doing it to do away with the inequity in the justice system that catches minorities but does not typically catch white people and put them in jail. Guys, we've got to stop this. If we ever want to have peace in our nation between the races, then we've got to be committed to doing away with injustice. We have to. It's imperative. There's a scripture verse. It says, it's Micah 6, verse 8, and it says, He has shown you, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, but to do justly and to love mercy and walk humbly with your God. And you're going to hear some people say, well, this is just a slippery slope. It's not a slippery slope. Is this the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee or not? It is. This is still a crime. It's a Class C misdemeanor. It's in the Criminal Juris Code. It's still a crime. But what we're simply saying is that we want to keep kids out of jail so that they're not destroying their lives. I had a strength and conditioning coach in high school. His name was Morris Keating. He was an African-American guy. He held the world record in the butterfly. And I'd say, Coach, why are you so tough on us? And he said, Steve, you're a kid. Kids are kids, and if you turn your back on them, they'll screw up. And I'm thankful I had Morris Keating and my dad in my life. I have not ever touched pot. I've never held a lead joint. Therefore, no, I did not inhale. But I've never touched it because I had strong people in my life that I feared, that I knew that loved me, and not all kids have that. Not all kids have that. And so what you're simply saying is that because a kid made a bad choice as a child, which we all make bad choices as children, that we want to screw them out of their future. That's what this bill seeks to rectify. That's what we must have the courage to speak into so that these kids have a future. This is going to take, Keith, this is going to take a lot of courage on all our parts. I'm a Baptist pastor. I was endorsed by Texas Eagle Forum. One of Texas Eagle Forum's biggest chapters in the state of Texas is in Montgomery County. This is not an easy one for me either. Not by any stretch of the imagination. And I hope you'll help me with this. I desperately hope you'll help me.
Thank you so much. Members, are there any questions?
Just to make this point, because I represent this population, not arresting them, but convicting them is not justice. It has the same impact when you try to get into a school, but simply by saying that we're not going to arrest you, but we're still going to criminalize.
Are you saying that you want to legalize this? Is because
I'm saying this is not.
That's nice, but that's a bridge too far, and we won't get that done.
But the bridge.
This is something we can get done. It's incrementally. This is something we can get done. We cannot legalize it. We won't get there.
But the lives that you will pave over by keeping them criminalized.
Fine, we can't get that done. We can't get that done. We've been trying to get this done for the better part of 15 years, and we can't get it done.
There are lots of well-off people that smoke weed, and they do fine. My experience in the criminal court system is there are a lot of people that because they don't have access to education, because they don't have access to health care, and they're right on the verge, marijuana can be the thing that keeps them from being able to succeed. It's a complicated issue.
Very
But
much so.
From my perspective of representing these people, of seeing their criminal history, of seeing when they can't get into school, of seeing when they can't get a job, it is not religious or Christian justice to say that we're doing some racial favor because we're not arresting you, but we're insisting
It's not a
for our
racial
Republican
favor. It's
colleagues that we're still
eliminating an
criminalizing.
injustice. It's not a racial favor to eliminate injustice in our nation.
You're still preaching to one side of the aisle, we are still criminalizing, while at the other side you say, we're trying to do some justice. It's a conviction is a conviction. And they're right that a Class C conviction for this population is a conviction. I'm just saying it's not this easy, and I understand it, and I appreciate that you're taking this path, but I'm telling you, with representing these kids, saying I'm not going to arrest you, but I'm going to make sure I continue to criminalize you, is not the avenue to justice, in my view.
Thank you.
Members, are there any other questions? If there's no objection, the substitute is withdrawn, and House Bill 99 will be left pending at this time. Thank you.
Thank you all.
The chair lays out House Bill 441 and recognizes its author, Representative Zwiener, to explain the bill. And Representative Zwiener, do you have a committee substitute?
Yes, Chair, I do have a committee substitute. It is just a ledge council version of the bill.
Representative, the chair offers the committee substitute, and Representative Zwiener is recognized to explain.
Thank you so much, Chair Collier, Vice Chair Bell, and the rest of the members of the committee. Y'all have had quite a night. I had a little brief fantasy of being able to laugh about laying my bill out at 4:20, but I underestimated the remaining enthusiasm of our witnesses. I think y'all have heard plenty about the benefits of right-sizing cannabis penalties. We've had a lot of conversations about that today, so I want to get into some of the things that really make our legislation different from the other bills filed before. One, this is language that the Texas House has voted on before. This language is the engrossed version of House Bill 63 from the 2019 session. I really want to thank Speaker Moody for all of his work on this. Another thing that makes this bill unique is that the governor's office has been intimately involved in the crafting of the language. And so it's something that we have confidence has legs to be successful. And the specific differences in language are, compared to some of the other pieces of legislation, I know they're all a little bit different. I have not reviewed Representative Toast's committee substitute. But one, we do have language in here that makes it clear that this is a non-jailable offense. Two, we do have language to exempt this particular type of offense from the definition of drug offenses that provides an automatic suspension of licenses, driver's licenses. So this legislation would not, or this legislation would prevent possession of small amounts of cannabis. Oh, and in this legislation, we are looking at 1 ounce or less of cannabis from affecting somebody's ability to drive to work, drive to school, et cetera. And then to me, most importantly, on pages 6 and 7, if anyone still has their eyes functioning well enough to follow along, we have language to provide for a deferral of dispensation for this type of offense as long as somebody has not had the same offense dismissed under this provision in the previous year. And this is not the judge may dispense this. This is the judge shall. So we actually have a pretty strong provision here to remove, to give folks a way out of this penalty, which I think addresses some of your concerns, Representative Johnson. And then also, we have an expunction provision as well that provides that upon receiving a request from somebody who has been charged with this offense, that a judge or a court shall dismiss and, a court shall expunge this from the record, provided a certain amount of time has passed, either 180 days from the date of dismissal or 1 year from the date of the citation. So this is something that takes care of a lot of the concerns that come with this still being a Class C misdemeanor. I want to note that there is a range of opinions on long-term end goals with cannabis policy. There are some members on here I agree with. On long-term end goals, there are members who I don't agree with. But I think that this particular piece of legislation is something we can agree on as a group. And my motivation for being involved in this issue is really twofold. One is we see dramatic disparities in terms of who is actually arrested for possession of cannabis. An ACLU study found that Black Americans were 4 times as likely to be arrested as white Americans, despite very similar rates of usage. And then the second big motivator is I represent a lot of young folks, and I don't want them to end up with a charge for something that doesn't hurt anybody following themselves for the rest of their lives. And I really want to thank a witness on the previous bill, Jason Vaughn, for elucidating that so clearly. So members, if there aren't any further questions, I will turn it over to witnesses and reserve my right to close.
Thank you. Any questions, members? Okay, we'll call you back up to close. The chair calls Jonathan Copeland. Let the record reflect that Mr. Copeland is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Karen Reeves. Let the record reflect that Ms. Reeves is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Ebony Johnson. Let the record reflect that Ebony Johnson is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Elizabeth Grow.
This is like The Price is Right. I know I do have way too much energy, guys. I've been watching you just work it all night long, all day long, and I am so impressed, and I respect all of your just tenacity and endurance and you listening, and you're patient with us. So thank you. This is my first time. My name is Elizabeth Grow. I represent myself and my family, and that includes a 16-year-old daughter. I'm from District 73. I live in New Braunfels, Texas, and I am testifying in favor of this bill. Today, I stand here with 77% of Texans who support penalty reduction and no arrests for the possession of small amounts of marijuana. Current penalties are unjust, unfair, and costing Texans too much money and too many precious resources. In 2019 alone, an estimated 30,000 Texans were convicted for low-level marijuana offenses, and 46% of those were high school or college-aged youths. 46% of those. Just let that sink in. That's roughly around 14,000 children, as I see them. I'm here for those kids and every other victim of the failed war on drugs for low-level marijuana possession. Now, enforcing marijuana possession convictions has cost Texans more than $311 million last year alone. And those arrests and convictions ruin lives, as we heard time and time again. Those lives are mostly African American and Hispanic lives, okay? Cannabis justice is racial justice, and we cannot sit here and be complacent with the status quo. We just can't any longer. And I know y'all have a very, very, very hard job in front of you, and I know you've been listening very, very closely. And I'm asking you, I'm imploring you to help us, to make a change in this state, help us reallocate those resources that the police are using to enforce these marijuana offenses and go after rapists and murderers. And how about people who steal our cars? Because only 89% of auto theft in Texas is, 89% of auto theft in Texas is gone unsolved. Only 11%. So y'all aren't going to get your car back if it gets stolen because they're too busy enforcing these archaic, these unjust, and these inhumane, as far as I believe, laws and rules. Now, we've learned from other states and other first world countries that cannabis is not a demon sent from hell, but it's an herb-bearing seed sent from heaven that can bring us jobs, especially in electricians. We've seen that in other states. That can bring jobs, tax revenues, safer communities. And in fact, multiple studies from Colorado showed that after cannabis was decriminalized and the market opened up, crime dropped, and so did teenage marijuana use. So these are all positive things. I'm going to send you all of this information. I'm going to email it all to you tomorrow, all my sources, so you have it. Finally, I just want to, again, implore you guys to please support House Bill 441 so our tax dollars can be spent on much more worthy causes and Texan lives will no longer be ruined for a plant. I thank you all. God bless you all. I hope you all get some great sleep, and I'm here to answer any questions. But
Well, thank you so much. Members, are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to be calling some more witnesses, but if a witness that has already testified has said what you want to say, just say ditto, please. The chair calls Patrick Pope. Mr. Pope.
Thank you all so much for bearing with us and for listening. It means the world that we're here. So I'll make it as quick as I possibly can. My name is Patrick Pope, and I am here in favor of HB 441, testifying on my own behalf. I'm a media producer, and my Texas-based production company tells marijuana stories and creates content around all the positive things this plant is doing around the world, and yes, even in Texas. I'm here today because I am upset at the way we criminalize people for using marijuana. I want to share my experience filming Texans that actively use cannabis for reasons of health and my experience meeting upstanding, powerful Texans that prefer cannabis but live in fear. My friend Dan Hansen was arrested in Caldwell County, Texas for possession of Rick Simpson oil. RSO is an oil with a high concentration of THC because it is used to fight cancer. Dan was fighting throat cancer and was given months to live. He was so sick, in fact, that the police department released him from jail because they could not provide the assistance he needed to be cared for. He was released, but his record followed him. He continued to choose RSO to fight cancer even though he was facing a potential 10 to 20 years in prison. He beat cancer, he survived, and his doctors contribute his success to the use of cannabis treatment. He faces trial. He is only alive to face that trial because of the very plant they arrested him for in the first place. Dan is a good Texas man. He's not a criminal. I've met high-powered executives that move industry and boom the Texas economy to the tunes of millions annually. They give money away philanthropically. These fine men and women hide their preference of marijuana because the state deems them criminals. My point, cannabis is everywhere in Texas. You want to know where they get it? There are growers here, y'all. There are growers in Texas. Cannabis is everywhere, and it is not going anywhere. Now that we are landlocked by states with more expansive programs and a country that is legalizing to the south. If you will follow me for just 1 second, it's so prevalent that I'm willing to bet that each one of you work with someone, have family or friends that use cannabis or have tried it. Maybe an elder at your church that uses it for Parkinson's or pain relief. The fun uncle at a family reunion. Are those people criminals? No, they're Texans, just like you and me. We've been at war with marijuana, and we've learned that war is not what you do with it. It's time for Texas to let the plant do what it does best, to heal, to bring peace of mind, to unite, to create community and culture, boom economy, ease depression, create jobs, all of which are not criminal nor things we are at war with. I'm here to encourage this committee to make a historic move and push through and champion HB 411 to decriminalize cannabis, eliminate arrests, prevent loss of driver's license, prevent criminal records, and reduce 1 ounce or less to Class C misdemeanor. Guys, it's our time. Please make history for us. We're begging you. You can do it. I'm counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? Thank you. Chair calls Emily Garrick. Let the record reflect that she is registered neutral on the bill and not testifying. The chair calls Robert Marks, Dr. Robert Marks. Let the record reflect that he is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Aldo Caldo. Let the record reflect that Aldo Caldo has registered against the bill but is not testifying. The chair calls Tony Lamar. Let the record reflect that Mr. Lamar, or Tony Lamar, is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Renee Perez. Let the record reflect that Renee Perez is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Jacqueline Finkel.
Thank you, Chairwoman and committee members. I will be super quick and I will talk super fast. So my name is Jax Finkel. I support this bill. I'm speaking on behalf of Texas Normal and Foundation for an Informed Texas. I did want to note that I have been advocating in this space since 2005, and to my calculations during that time, well over 1 million Texans have been charged or arrested for marijuana possession, and that's unconscionable. It should no longer happen. And to answer Representative Crockett's question that she had earlier regarding costs, I did want to lay out that $14 million a year is spent in police labor, $144 million a year in jailing, $52 million a year in DAs, $48 million a year in defense from indigent defense, $20 million a year in crime labs, and that was previous to the hemp bill going into effect, and then $32 million in court costs, plus the costs to the offender. So I will leave it at that. Thank you very much. Questions?
Members, any questions? All right, thank you. The chair calls Sean Salve, sorry.
Well, round two.
Yes.
All right. Well, I feel a lot better about it now because I've had a chance to get to know each and every one of you, and I'm really disappointed that Representative Murray isn't in the room because he said something very striking today. He said Texas does it better, right? California has had their say. New York, I am for the bill. My name is Sean Salvaje, and I am here for this bill and the next one.
But you're here for yourself, too.
And I'm here representing myself.
Okay, proceed, please.
And representing other cannabis consumers who are professionals, who are mothers, who are parents, who are veterans. You know professional smokers, I guarantee it. Representative Moore said that, and forgive me if I'm saying his name wrong, Texas does it better. Representative Johnson illustrated a valuable point when we discussed controversial bills relating to bonds. She explained how we have multiple points of failure overwhelming our judicial and criminal justice systems following natural disasters and the COVID-19 pandemic. And this prohibition is not helping us. It's hurting us. Not only was our system already stressed and failing, the people of Texas as a state pursued and continues to pursue the criminalization of marijuana. And I understand that we're not discussing legalization, but this is the step forward that we need because we are behind. Today, or yesterday, The Koch brothers announced a cannabis freedom alliance, so they're moving forward. Senator Schumer announced moving forward without President Biden. So Texas, the federal government is moving forward without us. Do we really want them regulating us? Do we really want them setting up the rules for our industry? This affects agriculture. This affects work. This affects our economy. It can create a robust economy. This is an industry that is going to be worth trillions. This is an opportunity for us to fix everything we messed up when we started prohibition. And I'll let you know, when this country started, it was mandatory to grow hemp. It was mandatory to grow cannabis. You can look that up in your history books. We even paid our taxes in cannabis. Isn't that crazy? That's because they knew how good it was for our economy and for us, and they wanted us to start on a strong foundation. I actually quoted you, sir, while you were out of the room. You said Texas does it best, right? We can do it better, and I think we can do that with cannabis reform as well. I'm sad that you missed it because it was really fiery, but I'd love to have a conversation with you. You guys are experiencing something that a lot of veterans experience, right? You're up right now. Welcome to the 24th hour. I've been here before, and we have a way of picking back up because insomnia. You know people who are afflicted with illnesses that will not get medical cards, and they are going to need adult use to be able to have cannabis accessible for them so they can supplement their health ailments. They can help heal themselves, even if they can't get a prescription card. We need to make progress. I saw you guys argue about these compounding effects with the bonds. That's this issue now. Where you were all those years ago when that conversation started, you're here now again. But the federal government is going to start making rules, and they're going to change the game if Texas doesn't lead the way. So I implore you to help move this forward, because I want to see Texas decide how we legalize cannabis, because it is going to come at some point, and that conversation starts with decriminalization, and that means we need to pass the measures that we can right now to move the ball forward, because we can't kick the can anymore. You said that about the bonds. You said that's what had happened, and that's what's happening now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your testimony. Said just like a master sergeant.
Any questions?
No, ma'am. Any questions? No, ma'am. Thank you so much. The chair calls Derek Cohen.
Still not loving that weed, Representative Sue. Thank you, Madam Chair. Derek Cohen from the Texas Public Policy Foundation, testifying in support of HB 441. Just to go over this, since this now looks remarkably like, or should I say, previous legislation that was discussed in this committee now looks previously like this one. I just want to reiterate those points in really quick bullet fashion, and the fact that this is neither legalization nor decriminalization, the fact that this puts the diversion rubric within the statute, and it also puts a no arrest for non-jailable offenses for just the 1 ounce or less. And though I also want to hit the fact that Representative Johnson brings up that I think we're not actually discussing much, which is actually a very good point, is that the litany of collateral consequences that come along with this. And now this has that expunction component, and you know, we've done a little bit of work on non-disclosure in sessions past that would give a little bit of relief to that, but we're still having a lengthy amount of collateral consequences that could arise from this conviction, even as a Class C. There are things that we can do, not necessarily within the bounds of these four corners, but within the bounds of this body. I think we can do to minimize some of those collateral consequences, but I think this is a positive step in the right direction, even if imperfect in doing so. So just want to say that particular part, and I think that this is a good piece of legislation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
The chair calls Amelia Casas. I'm going to have her mark down, let the record reflect that she is registered neutral on the bill and is not testifying. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 441? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Weiner to close.
Members, I've been thinking about something that Speaker Moody said about 9 hours ago, about, I was a little shocked when I did the math on that myself, but, that it really is amazing that we are having this type of bipartisan conversation in the building, and amazing that, y'all had have had multiple representatives, I believe 3 of us, waiting until the wee hours of the morning to lay out bills on cannabis. And to me, that's really a beautiful sign of progress. So I would ask for your favorable consideration, and I hope that we all manage an hour or 2 of sleep, and good luck with that.
Oh, no, I'll see you at 8 a.m. in public health.
You and I are not getting that sleep. We're going to be lucky if we get the shower. But
Right.
thank you so much, Chair Collier.
If there are no objections, the substitute is withdrawn, and House Bill 441 will be left pending at this time. The chair lays out House Bill 1178 and recognizes its author, Representative Crockett, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm going to make this fast because my mind is gone. 1178 deals with decriminalizing possession of drug paraphernalia. Hopefully, I still have at least one witness. Yes, I at least have a witness who can testify. Long story short, what we're seeing with this, these are Class C penalties. We've heard testimony. Right now, possession of marijuana, in a lot of areas, they're actually just dropping them down to drug paraphernalia. The concern is when you're dealing with persons, say, that are actually trying to, like, get off drugs, and there's, like, clean needle exchange programs and things like that, and it kind of just drags you back into the system. But I am tired, and so with that, I'm going to reserve the right to close and ask that you call witnesses.
Thank you so much. Any questions? All right, let's go ahead and get started with the questions. The chair calls Latanya Whittington. Let the record reflect that Ms. Whittington is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Jonathan Copeland. Let the record reflect that Mr. Copeland has registered for the bill but is not testifying. The chair calls Karen Reeves. Let the record reflect that Ms. Reeves has registered for the bill but is not testifying. The chair calls Emily Garrick. Let the record reflect that Ms. Garrick has registered for the bill but is not testifying. The chair calls Sarah Reyes. Sorry, Sarah Reyes.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Sarah Reyes. I'm representing the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition, and I'm a policy associate there. So the criminalization of drug paraphernalia. Four. Yes, okay. Sorry about that. The criminalization of drug paraphernalia has done more harm than good. Criminalizing it isn't reducing the drug use. The fact of the matter is that people are using drug paraphernalia, and in criminalizing it does nothing to solve the issue. Possession of this paraphernalia indicates that a person is using a substance. And if that's the case, why are we punishing people when we should be helping them? If we decriminalize, we have the opportunity to redirect individuals rather than continue forward with a punitive approach. In 2019, Texas averaged 1,500 drug paraphernalia arrests per month. Despite using drugs at the same rates, African American and Black individuals are 5 times more likely to be arrested on drug charges than white individuals. The issue this bill works to solve is not a criminal one, it is a social one that is layered. Harmful drug use is ultimately hurting our communities overall. This is why it is necessary to take the first steps of decriminalization, then creating education around safer ways to use. Criminalization of items such as syringes has made Texans sicker. Over half of the cases of hepatitis C in Texas are due to sharing or reusing drug equipment. Hepatitis C commonly causes liver cancer and liver failure. The ways to remedy this public health issue is to invest in prevention, such as syringe service programs. Every dollar invested in syringe service programs has a $7 return in HIV and hepatitis healthcare. Their syringe service programs offer many social services to people who struggle with substance use and misuse, such as access to drug treatment, peer support services, and sterile equipment. But criminalization has made it harder for programs to do things such as disposing of used syringes because people using them are afraid to be caught with them, so they don't get them disposed of safely. We need to reduce the stigma associated with drug use that individuals who do use substances are encouraged to come out and seek treatment and other necessary supports. This bill is a step in the right direction and will reduce the number of individuals arrested and incarcerated, which will then allow for the money we spend on incarceration to be put back into healthcare systems and prevention programs. This bill can and will save the lives of so many Texans. I hope to see this voted out of committee.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Members, are there any questions? Appreciate it. The chair calls Renee Pettis. Let the record reflect that Mr. Pettis is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Claire Zagorski. Let the record reflect that Mrs. Zagorski is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Elias Lang Cortez. Elias? Elias. How do you say that? Elias Lang Cortez. Let the record reflect that Elias Cortez is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Channing Neary. Channing Neary. Let the record reflect that Channing Neary is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Gilberto Perez. Am I on the right bill? Okay. Gilberto Perez. Let the record reflect that Mr. Perez is registered for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Kate Graziani.
Hi, good morning. It's Kate Graziani. I'm with the Texas Harm Reduction Alliance, and I'm here in support of 1178. Thank you, Representative Crockett. So I know everyone's exhausted, including myself, so I'll go quickly here. Sarah had some great talking points. I don't know who gave them to her, but I won't repeat them. So I do want to just call attention to the work of the Texas Harm Reduction Alliance and why we support the bill. We work with people who use drugs, primarily injection drugs, and we coordinate a network of harm reduction programs around the state. So we're encountering paraphernalia with the folks that we work with, and we see the health impacts of the fear of carrying both sterile or used syringes. And as Sarah laid out, there's incredible health benefits to reducing that stigma and the fear of carrying syringes in particular. The racial disparities present in the war on drugs is another major reason why we support this bill. We see that Black individuals are 5 times more likely to be arrested for a drug-related charge than white individuals, and we know that decriminalizing paraphernalia would remove a tool of the racist war on drugs. Claire, Elias, Huberto, Channing, we had a full house earlier who wanted to testify, and so I do encourage y'all to look at the written testimonies and read what many of our supporters had to say. One of our legislative work group members and a leader in the public health community here, Aaron Ferguson, was arrested in 2007 in Harris County for possession less than a gram of controlled substance. He was caught jaywalking with a syringe in his pocket and a baggie with a small amount of heroin residue in it, which led to 8 months of incarceration, 2 years on probation, and a criminal background that's followed him for the rest of his life. And so we want to reduce these collateral consequences and the harm caused by arresting people for public health issues. There's a lot more that I could say about this bill. We love this bill, and we appreciate that y'all are hearing all of these bills into the wee hours of the morning, but I'll stop there because I know we're exhausted. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, members? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. The chair calls Assistant Police Chief Ronnie Morris.
Good morning again. My name is Assistant Chief Ronnie Morris with the Grand Prairie, Texas Police Department. Here today representing, and I don't believe I included it on this one either, but if it could please be added to the record, Texas Police Chiefs Association and the Grand Prairie Police Department, speaking in opposition of HB 1178. I will just say that I did have some more visuals that I will spare everybody for sake of time, because I would like to drive back to DFW myself as soon as this is over. So appreciate all of your time. So House Bill 1178 would not effectively, it would make possessing drug paraphernalia in this state legal. Other bills before you today have sought to critically reduce penalties for certain drug possession, or in some cases decriminalize them altogether. You all now should have in your possession the drug paraphernalia policy of the Grand Prairie Police Department that went into effect in 2004. And I point that out to show that this isn't just something that we do because of the current climate today as it surrounds marijuana or other drugs that are being looked at to have reduced penalties or otherwise decriminalized. This is something that we have done in our police department for many, many years. And with this policy, all the police officers of the Grand Prairie Police Department are guided by this and mandated to abide by it, even when existing law allows for arrest. As you'll see if you read it, our first goal is never arrest, but instead stopping, removing the opportunity and prevention of crime and disorder. And that also goes back to the previous policy I provided to you on our misdemeanor arrests. So removing law enforcement's responsible discretion in enforcing drug paraphernalia laws is just another step similar to defunding the police in the slow dismantling of proactive policing that keeps our communities and states safe. Texas law currently allows officers the discretion of filing a lesser included charge of possession of drug paraphernalia in lieu of a violation of the health and safety code under certain circumstances. In removing this discretion by decriminalizing its possession, law enforcement would be forced to arrest individuals for state-level prosecutable low-level drug offenses where discretion currently exists for police to issue a citation or arrest for a Class C drug paraphernalia charge to be handled in a lower-level municipal court where sentence jail time is not an option. The visuals that I had would have demonstrated that all drug paraphernalia is not created equal, nor are they all just harmless tools. There has to be a better way to achieve what this bill is attempting to achieve without placing our communities in danger. And people who possess items that facilitate dangerous drug use pose a significant health and safety risk in all of our communities. I ask you all to oppose this bill and partner with law enforcement executives around the state and community stakeholders to draft legislation that addresses any potential inequities in current law while simultaneously keeping Texans safe.
Thank you so much. Members, are there any questions? Appreciate you being here.
Thank you all very much.
Are you staying for the next, are you out?
I've got an appointment.
Okay, I just want to tell you to be safe, though. Be safe.
I'm sorry?
I want you to be safe. I know you've been here a long time, so please be safe.
Thank you. Thank you all for your service.
Thank you, sir. The chair calls Sean Salva. Thank you. If you could state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Third time's a charm. My name is Sean Salvaje. I am for this bill, and I am representing myself and, disabled veterans and professional pot smokers, yada, yada. I really want to be concise as much as possible, but I do want to address an issue. Representative Crockett, I appreciate so much the bills that you have put forward because I see that you're really trying to make progress tonight. Thank you. Representative Collier, it's been, wow, a privilege to watch you work. Maybe one day I'll be in one of those seats. Why do I care about Chuck Schumer? Why do I care about the Koch brothers? I used to represent the Secretary of the Air Force from the Pentagon in New York, so I have a little bit of direct experience with politics and not being a part of it, just being a witness and trying to make things happen. And I know how things work. At least at the federal level. This state thing, this is new to me, and I find it really exciting. I came back to Texas because I want to help Texans. I care about Texas. Representative Cook, I see that oil and gas has been a priority for you, and you say that's a great way to make money here in Texas. The Koch brothers signing on with this Cannabis Freedom Alliance is the indication that oil and gas is on board with cannabis. So we might want to reevaluate our position on that because if they're moving forward and they're moving forward without us, where does that leave Texas? Representative Murr, tourism and agriculture are important to you. tourism in Texas if you get cannabis industry here for agriculture, where we can grow not just hemp, but also THC cannabinoids. The possibilities are endless, and the amount of money that we stand to make from tourism and agriculture is astounding. It's astounding. The studies are showing projections, financial, real fiscal projections are showing this is going to be $1 trillion industry, not billions. Let's see, what else? I'm just going with the representatives who voted against this last time to save time. Representative Kaysen, I believe you might have been one of those. Education allocation of funds. Nope. Well, you have a priority for the allocation of funds. I just looked up everybody's priorities. No, I'm just going by everybody's priorities. Thank you for correcting me. You in your website, it says that education is a priority for you and the allocation of funds to the police. I really love the arguments that we've heard today about reallocating funds. I don't believe in defunding the police. I consider myself almost like a first responder as a former member of the military. The interest of the country is my interest. That's what I had dedicated my life and was willing to sacrifice my life to protect. So I understand our law enforcement officer who came in with the bags of weed. That looks scary, right? But 1 ounce of that may only last some patients just a month. Some patients just a week. Some patients just a small serving of Rick Simpson oil, which takes that much cannabis to make because it is there to treat cancer. Okay? You can't become more intoxicated past a certain point. So if we're talking about the allocation of funds to the police, if we can stop harassing citizens like me, and I almost faced 2 felony charges because I was being followed by Border Patrol when I was going on a camping trip down south, and I was stopped illegally, and the ACLU helped me stop this, but I was stopped illegally, and then they tried to turn that over to local jurisdiction. All that I needed to show Border Patrol is that I'm a citizen, and I know right now I'm probably looking a little pale, but I'm biracial, so I'm Mexican-American. I grew up in the projects, and I also grew up in a very rich white neighborhood, and I went to Baylor because I got lucky and I got myself a scholarship. Now, you can go from the projects to that, and I think one thing that we've made a mistake, and I'll quickly wrap it up. One mistake that we're making is the characterization of cannabis consumers. They're not just kids who are lost in the hood who don't
paraphernalia, so we just want to make sure we stick.
Oh, I'm so sorry. And you know, anyway, I thought this one was 1609.
No, this is 1178.
I apologize for that. I won't be testifying for 1609. Consider this 1609 and just final closing remarks so everyone can get out of here.
For 1178, I have to have a clean record.
For 1178, then we'll say for drug paraphernalia. You know, professional consumers are going to have paraphernalia. I understand that we have an opioid epidemic, and I'd rather focus our energy on that than cannabis paraphernalia, things that are actually dangerous. Paraphernalia, it can be anything. It can be a glass bowl. It can be a glass vase. So we really have to consider what we're criminalizing here because just about anything can be paraphernalia.
Are you for House Bill 11?
I am for it.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The chair calls Amelia Casas.
Good morning. I promise I'll make this short. Amelia Casas with the Texas Fair Defense Project, testifying in support of HB 1178. Thank you so much, Representative Crockett, for authoring this legislation. This will simply remove penalties for the possession of paraphernalia, and that is all. We have had clients around the state lose their housing due to this very minor offense, which could have been easily avoided if this was already in statute. In addition, HB 1178 will reduce the spread of communicable diseases in Texas as we're currently surviving a pandemic. I think this is very common sense legislation, and we would love to see it pass through the committee favorably. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are any questions, members? Thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1178? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Crockett to close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Essentially, what we're doing is we want to make sure we're using our resources on the people that we consider to be criminals and involved in criminal activity. Possession of drug paraphernalia currently is a Class C misdemeanor. This is not something punishable by jail time whatsoever. But you just heard testimony about the collateral consequences that comes along with this type of offense. So while it's a Class C, the long-lasting effects are so much greater. And so I am asking for favorable consideration, and with that, I close.
If there's no objection, House Bill 1178 will be left pending at this time. The chair lays out House Bill 1609 and recognizes its author, Representative Crockett, to explain the bill.
And Madam Chair, I have a committee sub.
Representative Johnson offers up committee substitute to House Bill 1609, and Representative Crockett, you're recognized to explain.
So I think that we've had a lot of conversation about marijuana today, so I won't reiterate or rehash the majority of it. I'm simply going to tell you, number one, what the differences are between the original submitted version and the committee sub. While well-intentioned, I listened to some advocates that basically said, hey, you realize it's pretty much the same point that Representative Johnson was making, that even by going to a Class C and making it fine only, there's still so many collateral consequences because it is still a crime. And therefore, it's not just saying, oh, pay your $400, your $500, but instead it's saying you won't be able to go to college potentially. You won't potentially have housing. So even though we say, oh, it's a Class C, you may not be able to drive, your car lawfully because your driver's license may be suspended. So instead, what I did on this bill, another thing that makes it different is that you've heard 1 ounce, you've heard under 2 ounces. I just went for the full gambit, all misdemeanors. We can fight it out on the floor. I just ask that you vote it out. So any misdemeanor possession of marijuana, so that's a Class A or a Class B misdemeanor, is included in this. And those are the major points. So basically, it would be a fine, but it would be a civil penalty, and therefore we would avoid the collateral consequences that we're attempting to kind of work around. And I reserve the right to close.
Members, are there any questions for Representative Crockett? We haven't seen the committee substitute. Representative, do you have copies of it to hand out to everybody?
Yes.
Please. She wanted that walk.
Yeah, I need a walk.
Members, are there any questions for Representative Crockett? All right, the chair will go ahead, we'll give you the right to close, and we're going to go ahead and get started with public testimony. The chair calls LaTanya Whittington.
Thank you, everyone. Chair Collier and all the representatives here. I appreciate you taking me now because I'm not feeling well right now. I've been here all day, and I'll go straight to it. Thank you very much, Representative Crockett, for making this bill. This is something that would really help me dealing with my trigeminal neuralgia. And I remember when I did come to testify for House Bill 1086 for Moot, you asked me, what will it take? Are you willing to take any chances? That's what you asked me. Well, I'm going back to that. The question is, what are you willing to take? Are you willing to take any chances? All chances. I'm here to take a chance for my voice to be heard this morning. We need our medicine. I am sick, and I need my medicine. I can take something natural, and I can sit down the 21 bottles of pills that this doctor wants me to take for my trigeminal neuralgia. I want quality of life. Forget Big Pharma. Even though LT Dan and Greg are big friends with them, and they receive a lot of money, because I see the reports at the end of the session in 2019. This is really crazy. What's going on here? I want to live and I don't want to die. This bill needs to come out of the committee, like she said earlier. The House, LT Dan, and Abbott. They need to care about us. That's what they need to do. We're not funny people. We shouldn't be laughed at or gawked. We're up here telling you about our real lives and how we live every day. And Representative Crockett gets it, and I appreciate you. I need to smoke at least 3 grams a day. I just took my hemp oil right now so that I can get up here and speak to y'all. And I do concentrate when my electric shocks hurts really bad and I cannot chew, eat, or do anything. It helps me function. I'm dealing with a deep depression, and I will talk about that. I have lost my sister and my mother due to COVID-19. They're gone. So cannabis is the only thing that is helping me right now. I do not want to take depression pills, you know, Xanax and Zofran and all this other stuff. Cannabis is natural, and it's going to help me, and it has been helping me. And I miss my sister and my mother. They supported me with my cannabis reform. And I know that they gave me the strength today to stay here to 6 o'clock and come from Houston to talk to each and every one of you and ask you to free the weed in Texas and listen to our voices. Please pass this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for staying, and I hope you have a safe ride back home. Members, are there any questions? Representative Johnson.
LaTanya, thank you for coming up. I know we've had a chance to talk in the past. Do you feel like this conversation is moving and that your voice is starting to be heard and you're starting to make some progress?
Yes, I do. I do feel like everyone here has listened to all of our voices today. And I appreciate you,
Thank you for being
Representative
here.
Johnson,
You're
for
welcome.
participating with my cannabis reform in Houston.
You're welcome.
And listening to our voices. And I appreciate every one of you. May God bless you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. God bless you too. The chair calls Renee Pettis. The record will reflect that Renee Pettis has registered for the bill, but is not testifying. The chair calls Jonathan Copeland. Let the record reflect that Jonathan Copeland has registered for the bill, but is not testifying. The chair calls Karen Reeves. Let the record reflect that Ms. Reeves has registered for the bill, but is not testifying. The chair calls Emily Garrick. Let the record reflect that Emily Garrick has registered for the bill, but is not testifying. The chair calls Jacqueline Finkel.
All right, let's knock it out. Last time you guys have to see me today. Today. My name is Jax Finkel. I'm representing Texas Normal and Foundation for an Informed Texas. And I'm just going to do a really quick summary. You know, you changed it to the civil penalty. I haven't had an opportunity to read it yet, but I think it's a really wonderful change. And what I've heard from some people before is, well, do we have to set up a system for civil penalty? That might be cumbersome. But I just want to point out specifically civil penalties are already out for truancy. And in addition, thank you so much. I look forward to reading this in detail. Civil penalties are offered for truancy, and also the Lieutenant Governor, Governor, Speaker of the House, formerly Bonin, and the AG put out a letter after the hemp bill passed saying that there actually is also a civil penalty related to hemp possession. In fact, I think you have a bill addressing some of these issues that have come up around this. So I just want to say that there is already that standard there. And then lastly, I've heard a lot of people speaking on racial disparity, but I haven't heard a lot about the data. And so if you'll give me 1 second, I just want to hit a few numbers real quick. We've heard that you're 2.6 times more likely to be arrested if you're black in Texas, but to add texture to that, the definition of white in Texas also includes Latino. So that is specifically just if you are black. It is not if you are a person of color. Furthermore, many urban areas have moved forward with deprioritization. As Rep. Johnson pointed out, some have done first chance programs, some have done diversion programs, wide variety, right? Cite and summons. all of these different programs have benefits and detractions, but what I do want to point out is in Dallas, when they examined their program to deprioritize there, they found that 96% of those that were enrolled in the program were Black or Latino. In Austin, for the Cite and Summons program, they found that 37% were Black and 44% were Latino. In Houston, 50% were Black males. And just this week, Plano has decided that they will no longer be arresting people for possession of flour. So I just wanted to lay that out for you guys. I want to thank all of y'all for your time, and I won't spend any more with gratitude, but thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Ms. Finkel, can you just tell us, remind us what your position on the bill is?
I am for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize for not saying that.
That's okay. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
it. The chair calls Sarah Reyes.
Hello again. My name is Sarah Reyes. I'm representing the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition. I am for this bill. In 2019, about 45,000 Texans were arrested and cited for possession of marijuana. About 30,000 of those people were convicted and will forever carry a criminal record. It is important to note that of those 45,000 arrests, about 46% of them are high school and college-age youth or younger. I want to ask everybody on this committee to put yourself into the shoes of these individuals. Imagine being a college student or younger right now, and because you got caught using a small amount of marijuana, you now have to live with a criminal record forever. You might not be sitting here right now if this would have happened to you. I'm currently pursuing my master's at UT, and I would hope that a harmless decision I may make at 22 years old wouldn't follow me forever. It shouldn't follow anybody forever. We know that criminal penalties create lifelong consequences, as has been mentioned all day. Well, this bill has taken all this into account, and by creating a civil penalty, individuals will not be burdened by this criminal record or face the many collateral consequences that may come with a criminal penalty. In Texas, it is estimated that 80,000 licensed peace officers spent over 400,000 hours arresting and transporting people convicted of misdemeanors for possession of marijuana. This cost Texas citizens over $311 million, and the majority of that money, which is about $144 million, is spent on jailing these individuals. Texas is spending way too much time and money arresting and incarcerating these individuals. These arrests are also disproportionately affecting African American and Black communities, as it was stated before. We must stop doing harm and stop creating lifelong barriers for these communities. The answer is no longer criminal punishment. Creating a civil penalty will help to alleviate some of these collateral consequences these communities are facing right now.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Thank you so much. Thank you for staying. The chair calls Lori Zapinski. Let the record reflect that Lori Zapinski registered for the bill but is not testifying. The chair calls Cindy Castilla. Let the record reflect that Cindy Castilla registered against the bill but is not testifying. The chair calls Sean Salve.
Thank you. I'm Sean Salvaje. I'm representing myself, and I am for this bill. I apologize. I thought I had only signed up for 3. I didn't realize that one was the paraphernalia one. So I'm going to keep this really brief because I know we all want to go, and I have to take my kids to school. So right, and then come back. I want to thank you all for considering the criminal penalties that we face when it comes to cannabis or marijuana possession here in Texas. And I think it's really especially key that we're having this conversation right now as the entire nation is beginning to make rapid changes. I'd love to see Texas move before the federal government. I think we can do it better. I think it's better when we regulate ourselves locally, and that's, what I'm invested in is Texas, as well as America, but, I'm home now. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. Texans are common sense people who support, they understand the balance between individual liberty and public safety, and I think, that won't really be as much of an issue as we all fear. If 40% 46% of our users are college students. There's another really big chunk that are people like me, and I think there's a much smaller chunk of people who are actually dangerous. Let's go after those guys because they're probably doing other things that are probably going to get them caught anyway. And I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you all for your time. Thank you for indulging me on my first day. I'll be back. And I look forward to speaking with each and every one of you. If anyone has any questions or wants to have a meeting, I'm absolutely happy to do that. And Representative Hinojosa, I might see you later on this afternoon because we have medical stuff to talk about. So I hope you get some rest. Thank you so much.
Thank you, members. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you. The chair calls Amelia Casas.
Amelia Casas, Policy Analyst with Texas Fair Defense Project, testifying in support of HB 1609. Thank you so much, Representative Crockett, for authoring this legislation. I think I've already stated my case for a civil offense, but just to go into some specifics as to why it's specifically for this session and not particularly for past sessions. It's more urgent now than ever because after HB 1325 was passed last session, legalizing hemp, prosecutions for marijuana plummeted because it was very expensive and time-consuming to test between marijuana and hemp. Many DAs across the state announced that they would no longer prosecute marijuana possession cases at all. The annual statistical report by the Office of Court Administration highlights marijuana possession cases and convictions declined significantly post HB 1325. And in 2018, there were over 25,000 misdemeanor convictions for possession of marijuana. In 2020, the full calendar year after HB 1325, there were only around 9,000. So that is a huge, huge cut. And so if a Class C POM is created, testing will no longer be seen as necessary because people will not have lawyers to challenge the prosecutions. And so the prosecutions and convictions will likely skyrocket in a way that we have actually never seen before. And so for a Class C misdemeanor offense, nobody has provided a lawyer. I've already stated this. People will just pay off their tickets, not knowing that they're pleading guilty to a criminal drug offense, leaving them burdened with all these federal collateral consequences. And so for these reasons, I please urge you to support legislation that will create a civil penalty for the small amounts of marijuana. And I'm happy to speak with any and all of your offices on this legislation. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for all of your time today.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1609? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Crockett to close.
I forgot the most important part of this bill. I have a really positive fiscal note. I just want to let y'all know. They told me that this would actually bring lots of revenue into the state, and I actually believe that the number is understated. So with that, I close.
If there's no objection, the committee substitute is withdrawn, and House Bill 1609 will be left pending.